Last Call. A Workplace Rivals to Lovers MM Romance by Riley Fox. Copyright 2026 by Riley Fox. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced in any form or by any electronic or mechanical means, including information storage and retrieval systems, without written permission from the author, except for the use of brief quotations in a book review. Chapter 1. Nico, the heckler, arrives. The prep list for tonight's tasting menu doesn't account for the fact that my carefully assembled wine program is about to be dismantled by someone Yvonne just hired. I'm checking the Barolo's temperature in the wine cooler, holding it at exactly 65 degrees, the way you hold your breath before a presentation, when she appears at the cellar door like a small, decisive force of nature. "Nico, we're bringing someone in," Yvonne says. She's still in her chef's whites, which means she came straight from the prep line. "New bartender. I need you to train him on the wine side." The words land wrong. "No," I say. It comes out fast and certain, the way I say things that aren't actually negotiable. We have a bartender. We had a bartender who was making margaritas from a rail bottle and calling it craft. Yvonne leans against the doorframe with the weight of someone who's already won this argument before it started. Her energy is the kind that doesn't brook negotiation. I hired someone who actually knows what he's doing. You're going to teach him the wine program. I teach wine to front-of-house staff when necessary, I say, turning back to the temperature gauge. My fingers hover near the dial, wanting to adjust it, even though it's perfect. The ritual helps me think. I don't train people who have opinions about wine, especially negative ones. Good thing this one has opinions, then. He'll appreciate what you're doing. I don't respond, because I've learned that sometimes, with Yvonne, silence is the only language she respects. She runs Ponte with the kind of quiet authority that makes people want to work for her, that makes them want to prove themselves worthy of her investment. She's made the decision. The new bartender will start next week. There's no negotiation happening here. After she leaves, I stand in the cellar for a long time, looking at the wines I've spent 6 years assembling. Each bottle represents a story, a region, a vintage, a philosophy about what good wine can be. The Barolo, the Gruner Veltliner from Austria, the Sancerre, the Oregon Pinot Noirs from the Willamette Valley that I've spent years cultivating relationships with local winemakers to obtain. Every single one of these bottles is a conversation, and I'm fluent in that language in a way that most bartenders simply aren't. A new bartender with opinions threatens the entire system I've built. Later that evening, during service, Yvonne reappears at the bar. She's no longer in whites. She's changed into the black shirt and apron that mark her as front of house, ready for the night. She waits until I finish pouring a Chablis for a guest, and then she leans against the bar with the casual intensity of someone who's about to say something important. "His name is Soren," she says. "He's coming in tomorrow at 5 for the walkthrough. He worked at a place in Seattle doing cutting-edge cocktail work. He understands craft. He's not going to fight you. He's going to challenge you, which is different." "Challenge is another word for arguing," I say. "Only if you're defensive," Yvonne replies. She picks up a wine glass and polishes it with the kind of absent-minded precision that suggests she's done this 10,000 times. "He's interested in wine. He came here specifically because he wanted to learn from someone who knows. You're not training someone who needs saving. You're training someone who wants to understand." I want to argue with this. I want to tell her that I've built something specific and intentional here, that wine and cocktails are fundamentally different crafts, that inviting someone into this space is inviting chaos. But Yvonne is looking at me with the kind of certainty that suggests she's already considered all of my objections and dismissed them as understandable but irrelevant. "Fine," I say, which is how I acknowledge that she's made a decision and I'm going to make the best of it. Tomorrow at 5. That night, after service ends and we've cleaned and closed, I spend extra time in the cellar going through inventory. Not because we need inventory, we did it last week, but because the cellar is where I think, and I need to think about what it means to share this space with someone new. The wine cellar at Ponte is small, maybe 8 by 10 feet, lined with mahogany racks that I chose personally. The lighting is warm and indirect. The temperature is maintained at exactly 55 degrees Fahrenheit, the perfect condition for long-term aging. I've created the space to be a sanctuary, a place where wine can rest and improve and become something more than it was on the day it arrived. It's the last place I want to share. But Yvonne's decision is final, and I've learned to trust her instincts. She hired me 6 years ago when I was just out of sommelier certification, when I was arrogant enough to think that knowledge was the only thing that mattered in wine service. She taught me that precision was a form of care, that the way you handled a glass or opened a bottle could communicate respect to a guest. She transformed me from someone who knew wine into someone who could teach other people why it mattered. If she thinks this Soren person is worth my time, then probably he is. Still, I'm not ready for him. The next evening, I get to the restaurant at 4:30 to prepare. I arrange the wines I want to walk him through in order. I pull tasting glasses, actual Riedel glasses, not the cheap stuff we use for training. I rehearse the exact way I want to explain the wine program, the philosophy behind it, the reason that we don't just serve wine, but create experiences around it. At 5 o'clock exactly, Yvonne appears at the bar with a man I've never seen before. Soren is tall, maybe 6'2", and he moves through the restaurant like someone who's comfortable in hospitality spaces. He's wearing jeans and a dark button-up, and his hair is dark and slightly disheveled in a way that suggests he either just rolled out of bed or has been running his hands through it all day. He has the kind of face that's immediately likable, open, curious, with a slight smile that suggests he finds most things amusing. "Nico, this is Soren," Yvonne says. "Soren, Nico is our sommelier. He's going to teach you everything about how we approach wine." "I'm excited," Soren says. He extends his hand and his grip is firm without being aggressive. "I've heard a lot about your program here. I wanted to work somewhere that takes wine as seriously as cocktails." And with that, he's disarmed my primary objection. He doesn't come in acting like he already knows everything. He comes in wanting to learn. That changes something in how I approach this. "All right," I say, gesturing toward the cellar. "Let's start with philosophy. Explain the story of each wine, where it comes from, what the winemaker was trying to achieve, what it tastes like if you know how to listen to it." Soren asks good questions. He doesn't pretend to know things he doesn't. He listens intently when I'm talking, and he writes things down. By the time we're done with the walkthrough, I've almost forgotten that I was dreading this. Almost. When Yvonne dismisses him at the end of the night, she pulls me aside. "Well?" she asks. "He's not terrible," I say, which is as close to a compliment as I can manage. "He's excellent," Yvonne corrects, "and you two are going to build something remarkable together. Wait and see." I don't believe her, but I've learned not to underestimate Yvonne's judgment about people. At the end of the first week, when Soren is officially behind the bar during service, I have to admit that Yvonne might have been right. He's precise with his measurements. He respects the wines I've selected, and in a way I don't fully understand yet, he seems to be genuinely interested in what I have to teach him. I still don't want to share my cellar, but I'm beginning to think that maybe, eventually, I might have to. Chapter 2. Soren, the language of flavor. The first time I see Nico is at the Portland Food and Wine Festival, which is ironic because I'm there to heckle him. Not on purpose, not exactly, but I'm 3 drinks deep into the evening, I'm feeling bold, and I'm watching this sommelier, this precise, careful man in an expensive suit, lead a wine education seminar that's missing the entire point of what wine can be. "These are the classic pairings," he sang, holding up a glass of what looks like a Cabernet Sauvignon. "The wines you learn first, the foundations of understanding flavor profiles and acid balance." He's right, technically, but he's also making wine sound like a textbook, like something you need to memorize rather than experience. "What about adventure?" I say. It's louder than I intended, given that I'm in an audience of about 60 people. What about wines that challenge you? Wines that do unexpected things? The man, I learn later his name is Nico, turns to look at me. His expression doesn't change, but something in his eyes shifts. It's the look of someone accustomed to being questioned by people who think they know more than they do. "Unexpected wines are for people who've already learned the foundations," he says, in a voice that's precisely polite. If you experiment before you understand the basics, you just end up confused. Or you end up discovering something new, I counter. I've had wines that broke every rule and were brilliant because of it. And how many wines have you had that broke every rule and tasted like expensive vinegar, he asks. That lands. I have, in fact, had a lot of expensive vinegar. Fair point, I say, which costs me something, because I'm the kind of person who doesn't like backing down. But I'm also the kind of person who respects a well-constructed argument, and his was better than mine. The seminar continues, but I watch him now. Really watch him. The way he holds the glass. The way he swirls the wine with exactly the right amount of rotation. The way he pauses before speaking, as if he's selecting each word with the precision of someone choosing specific ingredients for a cocktail. By the end of the seminar, I'm fascinated and irritated in roughly equal measure. After the presentation, I find him near the bar, where he's apparently supposed to be conducting a wine tasting. I'm armed with more drink and more confidence, and I'm ready to have a real conversation. Look, I say, positioning myself at the tasting bar, I wasn't trying to be a jerk during the seminar. I was just, wine seems like it could be more fun than it is, more exploratory. He looks at me for a long moment, and I can see him deciding whether I'm worth engaging with. I'm betting he's going to blow me off, tell me to enjoy my fun wine, and move on to someone more serious. Instead, he says, "What's your name?" "Soren," I tell him. "Soren, come here." He reaches for a specific bottle on the table, not the Cabernet Sauvignon he was discussing in the seminar, but something else. It has a label I don't recognize, and the bottle itself is tall and narrow in a way that suggests European origins. "Tell me what you taste." The wine is complex in a way I wasn't expecting. It's not straightforward or simple. It has layers, and some of those layers are challenging. There's a kind of mineral quality that feels almost confrontational on the palate. It's difficult, I say honestly, in the best way. It's not trying to make you happy. It's trying to make you think. Exactly, Nico says. And for the first time, he smiles. It's small, but it transforms his face completely. This is a 2018 Gruner Veltliner from Austria. Most people don't like it because it refuses to be simple. It refuses to be comfort. But if you're willing to engage with it, if you're willing to put in the work to understand what the winemaker was trying to achieve, it becomes extraordinary. He gestures for me to taste it again, and this time I pay attention. I notice the acidity, the way it makes my mouth water. I notice the subtle stone fruits, the minerals, the sense that I'm tasting something that came from a specific place at a specific time and is fundamentally unrepeatable. That, Nico says, is adventure. That's exploration. But it's exploration with education, with understanding. It's not just trying random things and hoping they work. It's learning the rules so completely that you can appreciate when someone breaks them in a meaningful way. I think about this statement for probably longer than is socially appropriate. Then I say, okay, you've made your point. The foundation matters. But I still think you're making it sound way too clinical. Wine is made by people. It has personality. It has intent. Why not talk about it that way? Because intent without structure is just hope, he says. And I prefer certainty. There's something in the way he says this that suggests it's not just about wine. It's about how he moves through the world, precisely, carefully, with a preference for knowing exactly what he's doing and why. And then he says something that will change everything. What do you do, Soren? I'm a bartender, I tell him, looking for somewhere new, somewhere that understands that cocktails can be as serious as fine dining. Something shifts in his expression. It's subtle, but I see it. A recognition, maybe, or the beginning of a thought. He sets down his glass and pulls out a business card. I work at a restaurant in Portland, he says. Ponte. If you're ever interested in learning what serious cocktail work looks like alongside serious wine education, let me know. I take the card, assuming it's a polite dismissal. I don't expect anything to come of it. I'm wrong. 2 weeks later, I call the number on the card. Yvonne, the chef who runs Ponte, is apparently the person who decided they needed a new bartender. She apparently told Nico that they'd had a conversation at the food festival, which Nico must have described in diplomatic terms, and she thought we might work well together. I like to hire people who challenge each other, she tells me during my interview. The worst restaurants are the ones where everyone agrees. I want people who respect each other enough to question. I think you and Nico could be that. I'm skeptical. Nico strikes me as the kind of person who doesn't enjoy being questioned. But I need a job, and the position pays well, and Yvonne seems like someone it would be good to work for. So I say yes. The first few weeks are rough. Nico is formally polite and profoundly guarded. He teaches me the wine program, and it is genuinely excellent, I'll admit. But he does it with the emotional warmth of a textbook. He explains pairings and flavor profiles and the reasoning behind each selection, but there's no personality in it. No sense that this is something he actually cares about, rather than something he's executing with precision. And then something shifts. It happens during a busy Friday night service. We're in the weeds, the kitchen is backed up, the bar is slammed, and I'm trying to make 6 cocktails simultaneously while also helping Nico keep up with wine service. A regular customer orders something complex, a wine pairing that requires thinking about what the kitchen is actually going to serve, not what's on the official wine list. Watched Nico obsess over. A wine he's watched Nico obsess over. A wine he's talked about with more passion than he talks about anything else. A Pinot Noir from a small Oregon producer that he sourced personally, that he thinks represents the future of American wine. Nico sees what I've done. He looks at the wine, then at me, then at the guest. The guest tastes it, and his face changes. It's the look of someone experiencing something that transcends the ordinary. After service, Nico finds me in the back, where I'm breaking down my station. That pairing, he says, for the Dungeness crab and the risotto, was wrong, I offer, because I'm expecting a lecture. Was perfect, he says. And there's wonder in his voice, like I've done something he didn't think was possible. How did you know that wine would work with that dish? Because I've listened to you talk about that wine for 3 weeks, I say. You said it had this quality of terroir, this sense of place. You said it was complex but not challenging, approachable but not simple. The dish needed something that could stand up to the butter and the crab, while also complementing the subtle risotto. That wine does all of that. He's quiet for a long moment. Then he says, "You have a gift for this." It's the first compliment he's given me that isn't technically about execution or memorization. It's personal. It means something. I have a gift for listening, I correct, and for understanding that wine isn't just chemistry. It's communication. You're very good at the chemistry. I'm trying to understand the communication. Work with me, he says, suddenly. Not just during service, but for real. Help me think about how we're pairing wines. Help me understand what the cocktails are doing flavor-wise, and how the wines can support that rather than compete with it. Yvonne said something similar, I admit. Something about challenging each other. Yvonne is annoyingly often correct, Nico says. So, will you work with me on this? And that's how it starts. Not with romance, not yet, but with the beginning of genuine collaboration. With the realization that 2 people who approach flavor from completely different angles might actually create something better together than either one could alone. The next evening, we don't go home after service. Instead, we sit in the wine cellar, the first time Nico has let me actually spend time in that space rather than just passing through. And we taste wines together. He explains his choices, and I explain how cocktails work, and we start talking about a menu where they're not competing, but conversing. It takes us 3 weeks to figure out what we're going to do. But when we do, when we finally have the concept clear in both of our minds, we take it to Yvonne. A unified menu, she says, turning it over in her mind.
Wine and cocktails as equals. Each course has a wine pairing and a cocktail option, and they're both designed to work with the food.
They're designed to enhance each other, I clarify. Not just the food. The wine and cocktail should be in conversation. The guest should understand that they're both solving the same problem, just with different tools. Nico adds, it's going to require rethinking everything about how we've structured service. It's going to require education, because most guests won't expect this. But it could be extraordinary. Yvonne listens to both of us, and I can see her thinking through the logistics, the financial implications, the risks. And then she says, That's when I know for certain that this job is going to change my life. Not just because of the work, though the work is going to be challenging and excellent, but because working this closely with Nico, because building this thing together, is already changing how I think about flavor, about intention, about precision. It's also already changing how I feel about him. but that's a complication I'm not ready to address yet. Chapter 3. Nico, the collaboration begins. The unified menu concept is Soren's idea, technically, but I'm the one who understands what it means for the wine program. It means dismantling 6 years of structure. It means being willing to let someone else's work, cocktails, which I've historically dismissed as being fundamentally less serious than wine, exist as an equal partner. The irony is not lost on me that the man who walked into the food festival seminar questioning my teaching methods is now the person making me question everything about my approach to wine. We start simple. We pick a single dish from the current menu. Seared scallops with brown butter and microgreens. Straightforward, elegant, but challenging to pair with because the butter adds richness while the scallop itself is delicate. What wine would you normally pour here? Soren asks. We're in the cellar, surrounded by bottles, and he's sitting cross-legged on the floor like he owns the space, rather than like he's just been given permission to enter it. The informality bothers me in a way I don't want to examine too closely. A mineral white, I say. Usually, the Gruner Veltliner I showed you at the festival. The acidity cuts through the butter, and the minerality complements the scallop without overwhelming it. Okay, he says, and what are you trying to achieve with that pairing? Don't tell me the technical answer. Tell me the emotional answer. What are you trying to make the guest feel? I have to think about this. In 6 years of wine service, I'm not sure anyone has asked me that question. The technical answer is what I've always focused on: acid, tannin, flavor profile, balance. But Soren is asking for something else. I want them to feel like they're tasting something that matters, I finally say. Something that came from a specific place and reflects the specificity of that place. The wine should make the dish taste more like itself, not less. Soren nods like I've passed some kind of test. Okay, he says. So here's my question. What if we approached it differently? What if, instead of using acid to cut through the butter, we used something else? What if we made a cocktail that uses a bitter component, something like Campari or an Amaro, combined with something floral? That would create a different kind of bridge between the richness of the butter and the delicacy of the scallop. I want to dismiss this immediately. Cocktails are too sweet, too simple, too designed to appeal to people with unsophisticated palates. But I've been listening to Soren work, and I've seen the precision in how he measures and combines ingredients. I've tasted the cocktails he's been developing, and they're not simple at all. They're architecturally brilliant. Show me, I say. He gets up immediately. Soren is always in motion, always physically demonstrating rather than just explaining, and he goes to the bar. I follow, which means I'm leaving the cellar, which feels like surrendering territory. He makes me a cocktail with Campari, gin, a small amount of honey, and a floral note that I don't immediately identify. Elderflower, he explains, seeing my expression, from an Amaro I've been experimenting with. Taste it. I do. It's completely different from what the Gruner Veltliner offers, but it's not wrong. It's genuinely sophisticated. The bitter cuts through, but it's a different kind of cut. Not the sharp clarity of acidity, but a textured, complex flavor that makes you slow down and think. Now, he says, let's taste them both with the scallop. We arrange for the kitchen to prepare a tasting plate, 4 scallops, 2 prepared identically to what we'll serve to guests. We sit at a table in the dining room, which is strange because we never sit with the food. We pour the wine and prepare the cocktail, and we do a formal tasting. The Gruner Veltliner works beautifully. It does exactly what wine should do. It enhances the dish without competing with it. The clarity is perfect. But the cocktail does something different. It's more present. It doesn't disappear. It has a personality of its own that somehow makes the scallop taste more interesting by comparison. They're both good, I say, because I'm constitutionally incapable of just admitting that Soren's idea is excellent without caveating it. But they're doing different things. Right, Soren says. So the guest gets to choose. Do they want clarity and elegance? Do they want complexity and presence? Both are valid. Both work. It's just different. I'm thinking about what this means. It means the wine program I've built, precise, carefully curated, designed to be the only right answer, is suddenly not the only right answer. It means guests can make choices that I wouldn't make, and those choices can still be correct. It's terrifying. It's also exhilarating. Okay, I say. Let's do this. Let's build a complete, unified menu. The next 3 weeks are the most collaborative, challenging, and strangely intimate experience I've had at Ponte. Every single dish requires us to think through the question together. I bring the wine knowledge, the understanding of flavor profiles and regions, and what different wines are trying to achieve. Soren brings the creativity, the willingness to combine ingredients in unexpected ways, the understanding that a cocktail can be just as precise and intentional as wine. We taste constantly. We argue about flavor balance in a way that's productive rather than defensive. I tell him when a cocktail is unbalanced, and instead of being offended, he nods and goes back and adjusts. He tells me when a wine pairing feels clinical, and I try to understand what he means by that. I try to make the pairing feel more alive. Margaret, one of our longest-term regulars, comes in one evening and orders both options from our new menu. I watch Nico watch her taste, and I can see how much this matters to him. This isn't just about creating something new. It's about proving that it works, that it's not just an intellectual exercise, but something that genuinely improves the dining experience. Margaret finishes both pairings and calls for Nico and me at her table. "This is extraordinary," she says. "I've been coming here for 4 years. The wine program was perfect. But this is something else. You've created something that makes the food sing in a completely new way." It's a small validation, but it means everything. By the time we present the complete, unified menu to Yvonne, we're both operating on a kind of shared confidence that I've never experienced before. We're not nervous. We know what we've created is good. "Walk me through it," Yvonne says. She's in her office, sitting at a desk that's organized with the same precision that Nico brings to everything. I can see where his careful nature comes from. She's cut from the same cloth. We go dish by dish. I explain the wine rationale. Soren explains the cocktail architecture. We talk about how they complement each other, how they offer different pathways into the same flavor experience. We talk about how this creates a conversation between two crafts that have historically been separated. When we finish, Yvonne is quiet for a long moment. Then she says, "This is going to change how people understand what we do here. I'm going to promote this as the centerpiece of what Ponte is. I need you both to understand that this is going to be work. You're going to have to defend this concept to critics, to guests who are skeptical, to other restaurants that don't understand what you're doing. Are you ready for that?" Soren and I exchange a look, and I understand in that moment that something has shifted between us. We're no longer two people who happen to work in the same restaurant. We're partners in the truest sense. "Yes," I say, "we're ready." The launch of the unified menu happens on a Wednesday in September. Yvonne has alerted the regular guests, and we have a full house of people who are curious, who want to be part of something new. During service, I'm more focused than I've been in months. Every pour matters. Every explanation of the wine matters. But I'm not doing it alone anymore. Soren is at the bar, and when a guest seems interested in the cocktail option, he doesn't just make it, he explains the thinking behind it. He talks about why he chose specific ingredients, how they work together, what they're meant to achieve in conversation with the wine option. I hear him describing the Calabrian chili cocktail he's designed to pair with the spiced duck course. It's got a heat that builds slowly, so it makes you pay attention to the complexity of the sauce. But it's not overwhelming. It's more like a conversation partner, adding texture rather than just heat. That's wine language, I realize. That's him learning my vocabulary. By the end of service, I'm exhilarated and exhausted. We've executed flawlessly. Every guest left satisfied. I've heard feedback that ranges from politely positive to genuinely excited. Soren finds me in the wine cellar, where I'm doing final inventory. He's still in his work shirt, and he's flushed from being behind the bar for 6 hours straight. "That was perfect," he says. Every table seemed genuinely engaged with the concept. People were asking questions, comparing the wine and cocktail options, understanding that both were equally valid. "You were perfect," I correct. I watched Table 17, the ones with the sommelier from that restaurant in Seattle, and they were fascinated by your cocktails. The sommelier actually asked for your recipe for the Calabrian chili number. "Did you give it to him?" Soren asks, amused. "No," I say. "I told him you'd designed it specifically for this menu, and he'd have to come back to experience it here." Soren grins, and it's the kind of smile that changes his entire face, genuine and unguarded, in a way I'm starting to recognize means he's genuinely happy. "I like how you think," he says. We stand in the cellar for a moment, and there's something in the air between us that feels like it might be important. It feels like a threshold, like we're about to step into something that we can't step back from. But the moment is interrupted by Yvonne appearing at the cellar door with a bottle of champagne. I thought we should celebrate, she says, entirely unsurprised to find us standing close together in the wine cellar. You two created something extraordinary tonight. I want to witness you understanding that. She opens the champagne with the kind of theatrical flair that suggests she enjoys celebrations, and we each take a glass. The three of us stand in the cellar, this small space that used to be my sanctuary and is becoming something else, and toast to the unified menu, to collaboration, to the beginning of something that none of us fully understands yet. Means sharing my space, yes. But it also means sharing my space, yes. But it also means creating something better than I could have created alone. It means being willing to be challenged and changed by someone who sees the world differently. It means, if I'm being honest with myself, being willing to let Soren into the carefully organized structure of my professional life, and understanding that this might lead to him becoming important in other ways, too. I'm not ready to examine that thought too closely yet, but I'm beginning to think that maybe, eventually, I might have to. Chapter 4. Soren, the unified menu. The first time I realize I'm falling in love with Nico is when he admits he was wrong about something. We're in week 2 of developing the unified menu, and we're on the 5th iteration of the cocktail pairing for the halibut course. I've been experimenting with different approaches, a gin-based option, a vodka-based option, a whiskey-forward direction that Nico had suggested and I'd initially dismissed. Go back to the whiskey, he says, one evening after service. We're sitting at the bar, and he's looking exhausted in a way that's becoming familiar. Developing this menu is taking everything we have. I was wrong to suggest it originally. I thought it would compete with the delicacy of the halibut. But I was thinking about it in wine terms, which doesn't apply to cocktails. What do you mean, I ask, though I think I know where he's going. Wine is reductive, he says. It removes flavors from your palate to make room for the next thing. Cocktails add, they layer. The whiskey won't compete with the halibut. It will enhance it. It will create complexity that the fish actually needs. The fact that he's reconsidering his understanding of how cocktails work, the fact that he's willing to change his mind based on new information, is somehow incredibly attractive. So you want me to go back to the whiskey base, I say. I want you to do what's right for the dish, he says, which I think is the whiskey. I should have trusted your instincts. You understand this medium better than I do. And that's when I know. That's when I understand that this collaboration has become something that matters to me in a way that goes beyond professional partnership. He's teaching me that precision doesn't mean rigidity. He's teaching me that being willing to be wrong is actually the most intelligent thing a person can do. The whiskey-forward cocktail we develop is exceptional. It uses rye whiskey as the base, combined with a ginger honey component and a subtle bitter note from a house-made Amaro that I developed specifically for this menu. It's warm and complex and completely different from the Gruner Veltliner pairing we've chosen, but it works in its own right. And Nico gets it immediately. He tastes it with the halibut, and he closes his eyes like he's experiencing something profound. This is it, he says. This is exactly right. Margaret comes in on a Wednesday evening, and she orders the whiskey cocktail option instead of the wine for the halibut course. I watch from the bar as she tastes them together, and when she finishes, she calls me over. This cocktail, she says, is beautiful, but I want to understand the thinking. Why whiskey with fish? Ginger and honey notes pop. Those warm ginger and honey notes pop. Those warm spices complement the delicate nature of the fish without overwhelming it. It's not trying to be wine, it's trying to be a different kind of bridge between you and the food. Margaret nods thoughtfully. And what about the wine option? The wine is clarity, I say. And I realize I'm using Nico's language now, internalizing the way he thinks about these things. The Gruner Veltliner is about making you taste the halibut more cleanly, more purely. The cocktail is about adding dimension, different approaches, equally valid. And you and Nico designed both of them together? Margaret asks. We did, I say, which is the whole point of the unified menu. We're trying to show that wine and cocktails don't have to be separate. They can work together. After Margaret finishes her dinner and leaves, she hugs both of us, something I don't think she's ever done before. By mid-September, the unified menu is getting attention. Local food writers are coming in. A reviewer from the Oregonian called and scheduled a visit. Yvonne is handling the media side, but Nico and I are handling the pressure internally. The week before the critics visit, Nico starts doing something he's never done before. He comes to my apartment after service instead of going home alone. It's not sexual, though there's definitely something charged happening between us that makes every interaction feel weighted with possibility. But he seems to need the company. Or maybe I need the company. Probably we both do. One evening, he brings takeout from the Thai place next to my building, and we spread it across my kitchen counter and eat standing up while talking about cocktail architecture and wine regions and whether we've thought about incorporating house-made ingredients into more of the cocktails. You're thinking about this too much, I tell him. You're approaching it like a problem to be solved. It's not? He asks. No, I say. It's an experience to be created. You're trying to control every variable. What if you just trusted that it would work? Trust isn't professional, he says. Trust is the only thing that's professional, I counter. You trust your palate when you design a wine program. You trust the winemaker when you choose their wines. You trust the guest when you pour them a glass. Why is it different with cocktails? Why can't you just trust that I know what I'm doing? He sets down his pad thai and looks at me. Really looks at me for a long moment. Because if I trust you, he says quietly, then everything changes. Not just the menu. Everything. I understand exactly what he means. If he trusts me, really trusts me, not just professionally, but personally, then we have to acknowledge whatever this is that's been building between us. We have to stop pretending that we're just colleagues who happen to work well together. I know, I say. I'm not good at trust, he continues. I prefer systems, precision, things I can control. I know that too, I say, but you're going to have to get better at it because I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you, and this thing between us is only going to become more obvious. He doesn't kiss me. We just stand in my kitchen, surrounded by takeout containers, and we acknowledge, without saying it directly, that we're on the edge of something, and we're both too terrified and too drawn to step back. The next evening, during service, everything is perfect. Nico pours wines with the precision of someone performing a ritual. I make cocktails with the focus of someone trying to communicate something important. Every pairing works. Every guest seems to understand what we're trying to do. Tastes it. He's not just evaluating the tastes it. He's not just evaluating the flavor. He's evaluating me, understanding my thinking, respecting my choices, trusting that I know what I'm doing. And I'm watching him pour wine with an appreciation that goes beyond the technical. I'm seeing the care in every gesture, the intention in every choice, the love he has for what he does, and how that love translates into how he treats the guest. After service, when we're both done, Yvonne finds us wiping down our respective stations. The critic is coming tomorrow, she says. Friday service. I want you both to understand how important this is. If this menu lands with the critic, if she understands the vision, it's going to change the trajectory of this restaurant. We'll be ready, I say. I know you will, Yvonne says, because you figured out something most people spend decades trying to learn. How to create something that matters with another person. That's going to shine through in every single interaction tomorrow night. After she leaves, Nico finds me in the back room where I'm organizing bottles for tomorrow. Do you want to come to my place tonight? He asks. After we're done? I could cook something. We could talk through service, make sure we're aligned on the timing, the flow, everything. It's a practical reason, a professional reason. It's also obviously not the real reason. Yes, I say. I'll come. His apartment is small and precise in a way that perfectly matches his personality. Everything has a place. The kitchen is organized with geometric precision. The bookshelf is sorted by category and then by author. Even the way he arranges his couch, one pillow in the exact center, speaks to someone who finds comfort in order. He cooks pasta with a simple sauce made from tomatoes, basil, and olive oil, and we eat at his small dining table and talk about tomorrow. We talk about pacing, about the order of courses, about how to explain the philosophy to a critic who might be skeptical. But mostly, I think we're both just postponing the moment when the conversation becomes about something other than the menu. By the time dinner's finished, by the time we've cleaned up, the tension between us is almost unbearable. We should sleep, he says. We need to be focused tomorrow. I should go home, I say, understanding that if we stay, the line we've been carefully not crossing is going to dissolve completely. But neither of us moves. I don't want you to, he says. I want you to stay. But I also don't want to compromise the professionalism that makes tomorrow possible. So we sleep, I say. That's all. We just sleep. He nods. We move into his bedroom with the awkwardness of people trying to negotiate intimacy without crossing into something we don't have language for yet. But once we're in bed, once I'm pressed against his back with my arms around him, it feels less awkward and more right than anything I've experienced in a long time. In the morning, we wake up entangled and we don't talk about it. We just get up and shower and go to the restaurant like it's a normal day. But nothing is normal anymore. Tonight, when the critic comes, when we pour the wine and make the cocktails and show her what we've built, I'm going to be acutely aware that I'm doing this with someone I'm in love with, someone I've learned to trust, someone who's learning to trust me in return. And that knowledge is going to make every single thing we do feel like it matters more than it's ever mattered before. Chapter 5. Nico, the critic's visit. The critic arrives at 6:47 p.m. on Friday, 3 minutes before service begins. Her name is Sarah Chen, and she's the food critic for The Oregonian, which means her opinion can essentially make or break a restaurant's trajectory in this market. Yvonne told us her background. She trained as a chef before becoming a critic, so she understands the technical side of what we do. She also has opinions about wine and cocktails, which makes her either the perfect reviewer or someone who will find our unified menu concept fundamentally misguided. There's no middle ground. We've set the best table in the restaurant, a four-top in the corner with sightlines to both the kitchen and the bar. We've trained everyone on the floor to understand that this is a tasting menu, that the pacing will be specific, that every single interaction matters. Margaret appears on a Thursday evening, early enough that the bar is still soft with possibility. She orders a Chablis with the precision of someone who knows exactly what she wants, and Nico is just pouring when Soren slides past to grab glassware. And something about their coordination, the way they move around each other without discussion, the way Soren automatically sets up what Nico will need before he asks, makes Margaret smile. You two, she says. Not a question, a statement. Soren glances up, charming deflection already forming, but Margaret holds up a hand. I'm not offering unsolicited advice. I'm just saying, you remind me of my ex-husband and me. He was all structure, all planning, everything filed into neat categories. I was all instinct. I'd repaint the kitchen at 2 in the morning because I felt like it. I'd reorganize his entire office because the energy was wrong. We were either going to destroy each other or build something beautiful. Nico finds himself curious. Which was it? Margaret tilts her wineglass, considers it. Both, for a long time. Honestly, if I'd known to sit with it longer instead of getting impatient with the contradiction, if I'd understood that the destruction and the beautiful part were happening simultaneously, I might have let it be. What happened? Soren asks quietly. I decided I couldn't be contained. He decided he couldn't handle the unpredictability. We were both sort of right. She drinks her wine. But the waste of it, the waste was in not trusting that the tension between us was actually the whole point. That's how you build something that lasts. You need someone who steadies you and someone who makes you move. You need both. She pays for her drink, leaves a generous tip, and settles into a corner table. But her words hang in the air between them. Observation, wrapped in warning, shaped like kindness. Later, during closing, Soren is wiping the bar, and he says, "Do you think we work?" Nico is refolding table napkins with more precision than necessary. Maybe, but I don't think it has to be a choice between staying or leaving. I think it can just be settling. The both-and kind. That's very analytical for the instinct portion of our pairing, Soren observes. Maybe I'm learning, Nico says. And when he looks up, Soren is already looking back, steady, patient, present, like he's been waiting for exactly this moment, this small shift where Nico stops treating his depth like a secret and just lets it show. Margaret, in her corner, orders another glass and smiles into her wine. I've been meticulous in my preparation. I've polished every wine glass twice. I've arranged the wines in perfect order, not by how they appear in the tasting menu, but by temperature, so that I can pour with absolute precision and confidence. I've spent time thinking through exactly how I want to explain the philosophy of pairing, how to frame the concept of a unified menu for someone who might have never encountered it before. What I haven't done is sleep. It's been 5 nights since Soren and I slept in the same bed, and while we haven't acknowledged it at work, while we've been professional in every observable way, I'm hyper-aware of him in a manner that's distracting, in the worst possible way for a night when I need absolute focus. Soren is behind the bar, making last-minute adjustments to his setup. I watch him, briefly, and I can tell that he's also in that state of controlled focus that comes from caring about something so much that failure feels impossible. His hands are steady as he arranges bottles. His expression is neutral. But I know him well enough now to recognize the tension in his jaw that suggests he's running through cocktail recipes in his mind, making sure he hasn't forgotten anything. The first course arrives at 7:03 p.m., a delicate scallop crudo with sea urchin, lemon, and a single microgreen. It's beautiful. Yvonne has outdone herself. The plate is almost art. I pour the first wine, a muscadet from the Loire Valley, crisp and mineral and completely appropriate for raw seafood. Soren makes the first cocktail, a gin-based drink with a bright citrus note and a subtle floral background that bridges between the brininess of the sea urchin and the brightness of the lemon. I watch Sarah Chin taste the wine first. I watch her palate, her expression. She closes her eyes, good sign, and tastes it again. Then she tastes the food with the wine, and I can see understanding dawn on her face. Then Soren brings the cocktail. He doesn't just place it down. He sits for a moment and explains. This is a pairing that's designed to complement the wine rather than compete with it. The gin gives you a botanical structure that you don't get with the muscadet. The citrus is bright, like the lemon on the plate, but it's a different kind of brightness. The floral note from the elderflower amaro creates a complexity that draws out different flavors in the scallop itself. Sarah tastes the cocktail. She compares them, literally takes a sip of wine, then a sip of cocktail, then tastes the food again. This is fascinating, she says. You're not treating them as alternatives. You're treating them as complements. Exactly, Soren says. He glances at me, and I see the slight relaxation in his shoulders. We've cleared the first hurdle. Course 2 arrives at 7:31 p.m., a delicate quail with a cherry gastrique and charred vegetables. This is where it gets complex. The sweet, savory nature of the cherry, paired with the richness of the quail, demands careful pairing. I pour a Pinot Noir from Oregon, a wine I've spent months sourcing, a wine I believe in deeply. It's subtle enough to not overwhelm the delicate bird, but complex enough to match the sophistication of the sauce. Soren brings a whiskey-based cocktail, rye, house-made cherry bitters, a touch of honey, and a subtle bitter component from his custom amaro. It's warm where the wine is cool, present where the wine is elegant. Sarah tastes both options carefully. I can see her thinking through the flavor profiles, understanding the logic of each choice. She makes a note, the first explicit note she's made about something other than the food itself. The wine is more traditional, she says, as if thinking out loud. It's what I would expect with this dish. But the cocktail, she pauses. The cocktail is more interesting in some ways. It's more present. It demands engagement in a different way. That's the idea, I say. Neither is wrong. They're different pathways to the same destination, understanding the complexity of what the chef has created. Course 3 arrives at 8:04 p.m. Halibut with brown butter, caramelized endive, and a subtle lemon beurre blanc. This is where Soren's whiskey cocktail shines. I've already poured the Gruner Veltliner, the wine from the food festival, the wine that started this entire journey, and I'm watching Sarah's face as she tastes the wine with the halibut. She understands it immediately, the acidity, the minerality, the way it makes the butter taste fresh instead of heavy. She nods slightly, appreciating the choice. Then Soren brings the cocktail. It's the one he and I debated about so many times, the whiskey ginger honey with the subtle amaro finish. It's not what most people would pair with fish, and I watch Sarah register that, watch her prepare to be skeptical. But then she tastes it. Oh, she says. It's a small sound, but it's the most important sound of the night. It's the sound of someone experiencing something they didn't expect to experience, something that challenges their assumptions about how pairing should work. She tries them together, wine and food, cocktail and food, wine and cocktail and food. She's trying to understand the entire ecosystem, the entire conversation. This is the strongest pairing yet, she finally says. I understand what you're doing now. You're creating a menu where different guests can have completely different experiences based on their preferences, but every single option is executed with the same level of care and intention. Yes, I say, and I feel Soren's attention on me from the bar. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve. Course 4 arrives at 8:47 p.m. Duck breast with a spiced cherry burgundy reduction and creamed parsnips. This is technically challenging because the spicing requires a certain kind of tannin structure, and Soren's Calabrian chili cocktail is aggressive in a way that most people wouldn't expect. I pour a 2016 Côte de Rhône, a wine with enough structure to handle the spicing, but enough finesse to not overwhelm the duck. Soren approaches the table himself with the cocktail. He stands there, a violation of typical service protocol. But Yvonne approved this because some explanations require presence. And he says, "This cocktail is built on rye and a Calabrian chili liqueur that I made in-house. It has heat, but the heat builds slowly. The herbs in the cocktail bridge with the spices in the reduction, and the rye's warmth complements the richness of the duck. It's a bold pairing. Not everyone will choose it, but for people who like heat and complexity, it's going to be your favorite of the night." Sarah tastes both options methodically. She's not rushed. She's not performing for us anymore. She's genuinely trying to understand each pairing on its own merits. "The wine is beautiful," she finally says. "Elegant, refined. But I'm actually more interested in the cocktail. The heat is exactly what I didn't know this dish needed until I tasted it." I can see Soren's hand tighten on the bar from across the room. This is validation. This is someone with expertise and authority acknowledging that his work is excellent. Course 5 arrives at 9:22 p.m., a cheese course featuring 3 local Oregon cheeses paired with fresh bread and cured meats. This is where things get interesting, because Soren has designed a completely non-traditional pairing. I pour a Riesling, a wine that's slightly off-dry, with enough acidity to cut through the richness of the cheese, but enough fruit to complement the cured meats. Soren brings a cocktail made with brandy, Granny Smith apple juice, a touch of honey, and bitters. It's sophisticated and unexpected, and when Sarah tastes it with the cheese, she laughs. "This is wonderful," she says. "It's not what I would have chosen, but now that I'm tasting it, I completely understand the logic. The apple provides a bridge between the sweetness and the salty elements. The brandy gives you a richness that complements the cheese without competing with it." "Exactly," Soren says, and I can hear the satisfaction in his voice. Course 6, dessert, arrives at 10:06 p.m. A dark chocolate torte with a quenelle of espresso cream and candied citrus peel. This is where the pairing becomes almost poetic. I pour a Banyuls, a fortified wine from southern France that's made from Grenache grapes and has a deep, complex chocolate character that's almost designed for this dessert. Soren brings a cocktail that's entirely unique. Vodka infused with dark chocolate and coffee, combined with an Amaro, a touch of creme de cacao, and a sugar rim. It's decadent, and it's completely appropriate. And when Sarah tastes them both with the torte, she sets down her spoon and closes her eyes. "This is the best pairing of the night," she finally says. And I say that as someone who thinks the wine is absolutely perfect. But the cocktail is... It's creating a conversation with the food that the wine isn't quite achieving. It's richer, more present. It's turning dessert into an experience rather than just a course. After Sarah finishes the dessert course, after she's tasted everything and sat back in her chair with the satisfied expression of someone who's been fed beautifully and intellectually challenged simultaneously, Yvonne approaches the table. "I hope you've enjoyed the evening," she says. She's not asking if Sarah enjoyed it. She's stating it as a fact. "Very much," Sarah says. "This is the most innovative approach to pairing I've encountered in Portland. I have a lot of questions for your team." That's when Yvonne invites Sarah to come back to the kitchen, to meet the team, to understand the philosophy behind the menu. It's a violation of service protocol, but it's intentional. Sarah needs to understand that this isn't just a gimmick. This is genuine collaboration. I watch as Yvonne walks Sarah back to see the kitchen. I watch as the chefs explain their thinking. I watch as Sarah begins to understand the depth of what we've created, not just in the execution, but in the philosophy. Then Sarah comes to the bar. "Tell me about the cocktails," she says to Soren, and for the next 30 minutes, he walks her through his thinking, his sourcing, his approach to making cocktails that are equal partners with wine rather than alternatives. I stay in the dining room, finishing cleanup, but I'm listening. I'm hearing Soren explain our collaboration, hearing him talk about how the unified menu was a conversation between craft and craft, discipline and discipline, equal partners creating something neither could alone. After Sarah leaves, around 11:30 p.m., well after service ends, well after we should be closing, Yvonne gathers all of us in the dining room. That, she says simply, went exactly as I hoped. I believe we just showed her something that's going to become the centerpiece of her review. Did she seem happy? One of the servers asks. Happy isn't the word, Yvonne says. Challenged, impressed, engaged. Those are the words I'd use. She came here as a critic, expecting to evaluate the food. She's leaving as someone who's encountered a philosophy about how a restaurant can operate. That's more valuable than happiness. After everyone disperses, after the kitchen is cleaned and the bar is cleaned and the restaurant is ready for tomorrow, Soren finds me in the wine cellar. We did it, he says. He's standing in the doorway and he's looking at me like maybe he's about to cross the line we've been carefully not crossing. We did, I confirm. I want to kiss you, he says. I've been wanting to kiss you for weeks, but I wanted to wait until this was over. I wanted to make sure that if I started something, I wasn't compromising the work we were doing. And now, I ask? Now the work is done, he says, or at least this part of it is done. And I don't want to wait anymore. He walks into the cellar, toward me, and the moment is suspended like a perfect bottle of wine, complex, full of possibility, on the edge of becoming something real. Are you sure? I ask. Because if we do this, everything changes. I know, he says. I've been ready for that to happen for a while now. Have you? I think about everything we've created together. The trust, the understanding, the meaning. Yes, I say, I've been ready. And then he kisses me. Chapter 6. Soren, the space between us. The morning after we kiss in the wine cellar, we don't discuss it. We show up for service like nothing has changed. And Nico is polite and professional and completely unreachable. It's worse than if he'd been hostile. We work together for 6 hours, and he barely makes eye contact. The memory hits at the worst possible moment. Nico's bent over his inventory notes, completely focused, and Soren is trying very hard not to look at him, trying very hard not to think about the last time someone looked at him like he mattered. You're allergic to commitment, she'd said, like she'd finally figured out the puzzle of him. You treat everything like a cocktail experiment, always mixing things up, never letting anything settle. You get bored. It had been delivered gently, which somehow made it worse. Not a fight, just the conclusion she'd reached. And the worst part was that Soren had nodded, had said something self-deprecating and charming to cover the way it landed. Because that's what he does, isn't it? He deflects. He mixes things up. He doesn't sit still long enough for people to actually know him. Except that wasn't true. Not really. He'd sat still for her. He'd wanted to settle. He'd been ready. He just hadn't been ready in a way she could see. And by the time he figured out how to translate his feelings into a language she understood, she'd already decided who he was. Now Nico is humming while he works through the inventory, completely unconscious of how he's become the still point in Soren's spinning world. How Soren would actually let something settle. How he'd risk the chaos if it meant keeping this exact thing, this man, this partnership. Soren picks up a wine glass to polish, puts it down. You all right? Nico asks, not looking up. Just thinking about how I'm not as good at change as people think I am, Soren says carefully. Nico finally glances over. What? Nothing. Just that some people are harder to mix up than others. Some things get better when they stay still. Something shifts in Nico's expression. Awareness, maybe. Or recognition. But Nico just returns to his notes, and Soren keeps polishing glasses, holding this moment of almost honesty close, like a secret that might actually mean something. After we close, I corner him in the wine cellar, which is becoming our place, I've noticed. The place where important things happen. So are we going to talk about this? I ask. There's nothing to talk about, he says, not looking at me. It was a moment. We were caught up in the energy of the evening. It doesn't need to become anything. You kissed me, I say. You initiated the kiss. You said everything changes. I was wrong, he says. It's cold, controlled. Exactly the tone he used when we first met and he was protecting himself against the possibility that I might ask him something he didn't know the answer to. I was caught up in the moment. It was a mistake. Don't do that, I say. Don't pretend this is something it's not. Don't pretend I'm something I'm not. He finally looks at me, and his expression is absolutely shuddered. You're my colleague. You're someone I work with. Getting involved would compromise that. It would compromise the menu, the restaurant, everything we've built. No, it wouldn't, I say. It would make it better. We're better together. I don't do relationships, he says, and it's said with such finality that it feels like a door closing. I do work. I do precision. I do things I understand. Relationships are chaos, and I don't function well in chaos. We create chaos together, I say, trying to make him understand. We created the unified menu together, and it's the best thing either of us has ever done. This would just be the same thing, but personal instead of professional. You're wrong, he says. The menu works because we have roles. You make the cocktails, I do the wine. We collaborate within those structures. A relationship would blur those lines. It would make everything unclear. I want to argue with this. I want to tell him that clarity isn't the only thing that matters, that sometimes blur is where the most beautiful things happen. But I can see that he's already decided. And arguing with Nico when he's decided something is like trying to convince water to flow uphill. So I leave the wine cellar. I go home. I try not to think about the fact that for one moment, for the space of time between when he kissed me and when the morning came, I thought we had something real. The next week is difficult. The review from Sarah Chen comes out, and it's everything we hoped for. She calls the unified menu the most innovative approach to pairing in Portland, a true conversation between wine and cocktails, demonstrating that two disciplines don't need to compete. They can enhance each other. The review is stunning. Within days, we have reservations backed up 3 months. Yvonne is talking about expanding. Other restaurants are calling Nico, trying to understand his philosophy. We're becoming something bigger than we expected. And through all of it, Nico treats me like a valued colleague and nothing else. It's professional, it's appropriate, it's completely devastating. Margaret notices, of course. Margaret notices everything. She comes in one evening, orders both wine and cocktail options, and after tasting them both, she watches me clean the bar for a moment, and then she says, "Something's wrong between you and Nico." "Everything's fine," I say, not looking at her. "You're lying," Margaret says, in the gentle way that only a regular customer who's watched your life unfold in front of them can say it. You were perfect together before. The way you moved around each other, the way you understood what each other needed without having to ask, that's gone now. It's just stress, I say. The success of the menu, expansion plans, normal restaurant stuff. It's not, Margaret says. She waits until I'm finally looking at her. Whatever happened, whatever you did or didn't do, you need to fix it. Because what you two have together is rare. I've been coming here for 5 years. I've seen a lot of staff come and go. I've watched Nico work with people for years without ever seeming to actually care. But with you, he cares. He challenges you because he wants you to be better. He listens to you because he respects you. Don't waste that. After Margaret leaves, I spend the rest of service thinking about what she said. I think about the way Nico looks at me when he thinks I'm not noticing, like I'm something complicated that he doesn't know how to solve but desperately wants to understand. I think about how he builds walls with order and structure, calling it professionalism to keep anyone from getting too close. But I'm already too close, and I think, underneath the walls, he knows that. That Friday, I do something I've been avoiding. I go to his apartment. It's almost 11 p.m. after service, and I know he'll be home because Nico is always home after service. Always alone in that precisely organized space he's built to keep the world at a manageable distance. He opens the door, and his expression goes through 3 stages in the space of a second. Surprise, closure, and something that might be longing before he locks it down. "We need to talk," I say. "I don't think that's a good idea," he says. But he doesn't close the door. He just stands there, looking like someone who's been fighting a losing battle with his own heart. "I'm going to talk anyway," I say, "and you're going to listen because you owe me that much." He steps aside, and I walk into his apartment. It smells like wine and carefully measured precision, like Nico. "What you said in the cellar," I start, "about relationships being chaos and not functioning well in chaos. That's not true. You function well in chaos. You create order out of it. That's what you did with the unified menu. I came in chaotic and unstructured, and you helped me understand that creativity needs some kind of framework. And what I did was help you understand that structure without flexibility is just rigidity. We balance each other. That's work, he says. That's different from a relationship. Why? I ask. Why can't this work? Why can't we try? Because I'm not good at love, he says. And this is the first honest thing I've heard from him since we kissed. I'm good at work. I'm good at systems and precision. Love is improvisation, and I don't improvise. Yes, you do, I say. You improvise all the time with wine. You taste something unexpected, and you figure out how to incorporate it into the program. You take new information and integrate it. That's improvisation. That's love. Love is just improvisation on a bigger scale. You're wrong, he says, but he sounds less certain now. I'm not, I say, and you know I'm not. You're just scared. He doesn't respond to that. He walks to the window and stands there, looking out at Portland at night. And I can see the line of his shoulders, the tension in his neck. He's fighting something internal, and I wait for him to lose that fight, because I believe he will. If we do this, he finally says, without turning around, if we try a relationship and it doesn't work, I lose you. I lose the collaboration we've built. I lose the unified menu. I lose the thing that's given me purpose for the last 4 months. That's the fear, I acknowledge, but it's not the reality. Even if we tried and it didn't work, which I don't think would happen, but even if, we'd still be able to work together. We'd still have the menu. We'd still have respect for each other. You can't know that, he says. No, I say, but I know that the alternative is definitely losing something. It's losing the chance to see if what we have could become something bigger. That's a guaranteed loss versus a possible loss that I don't think will happen. He finally turns around and looks at me, and I can see the conflict in his face. The part of him that wants to organize everything and make it safe, versus the part of him that recognized, when he kissed me in the wine cellar, that some things are worth the risk. I'm terrified, he says. I know, I say. I'm terrified too. But I'm less terrified of us failing than I am of us not trying. He walks toward me, and he moves slowly, like he's approaching something fragile. When he reaches me, he takes my hand. If we do this, he says, it has to be intentional. It has to be a choice we make consciously, understanding all the risks. Okay, I say. I need to think about it, he says. I need to process this in my own way. I can't just jump into something because you've made a compelling argument, even though you have. How long do you need? I ask. A few days, he says. Let me think through what it would mean, how we'd navigate it at work, what the possibilities are for things to go wrong. Let me build a framework for understanding it. You're going to organize your feelings like they're a wine inventory, I say. And I mean it as a gentle tease. Yes, he says, absolutely serious. Probably. Because that's how I process things. But that doesn't mean I don't care. It means I care so much that I need to think carefully about how to proceed. I accept this. I accept that Nico loves methodically and carefully, and that's just who he is. I kiss him, just a brief kiss, just enough to remind him what we're talking about. And then I leave his apartment. Call me when you've built your framework, I say at the door. Soren, he says, and his voice is softer than I've heard it in days. I'm going to say yes. I just need to figure out how. I know, I say. Take your time. I can wait. I can, actually. I can wait because I know what he's figuring out. That love is just another system to understand. And once he's understood it, once he's built the framework for it, he's going to be exactly the kind of person worth waiting for. Chapter 7. Nico, the confession. 3 days after Soren shows up at my apartment and effectively dismantles every defensive structure I've built, I'm organizing my thoughts like wine, categorizing them, understanding their structure, trying to make sense of how to proceed. Here's what I know. 1. I'm in love with Soren. This is not a theoretical position or a hypothesis. This is a fact, as certain as the fact that a 2015 Gruner Veltliner from Austria is one of the best wines I've ever tasted. 2. A relationship with him would fundamentally change my life. Not in a bad way, necessarily, but in a way that requires surrendering some of the control I've spent my entire adult life constructing. 3. The unified menu we've created is genuinely revolutionary. It's the best work I've ever done. And it's the best work because Soren is in it with me, because we're challenging each other, because we've built something that neither of us could build alone. 4. If a relationship doesn't work, I could lose all of that. 5. But if a relationship does work, I could have something I've never had before. A partner who understands the work deeply enough to also understand me. Here's what I'm still trying to figure out. 1. How to navigate this at work without compromising the professionalism that makes the restaurant function. 2. Whether I have the capacity for love or whether I'm too structured, too defensive, too much of a control mechanism to actually be a good partner. 3. Whether fairness to Soren means letting him go, since he deserves someone who comes naturally to love rather than someone who has to build a framework for it. On the third night, I find Yvonne in the restaurant after service, counting money in her office. She looks up when I knock on the doorframe. I need advice, I tell her. About Soren, she says, not even looking surprised. Yes, I can see that you need advice. I sit down across from her desk. Did you know? When you hired him, did you know that this would happen? I knew it was possible, Yvonne says. I knew that two people brought together with complementary skills and genuine respect would have the potential to become something more. I didn't force it, but I created the conditions for it to be possible. That feels manipulative, I say. It was, Yvonne agrees, without any shame. I manipulated the circumstances because I believed it would make you both better people and better professionals. Do you regret it? I don't know, I say. I'm terrified. I'm good at work. I'm not good at relationships. I've never been good at relationships. I've always preferred solitude and structure to the messiness of actual connection. That's because you haven't met someone worth breaking structure for, Yvonne says. Soren is worth it. He's talented and kind and genuinely interested in you as a person, not just as a brilliant sommelier. That's rare. That's worth the risk. What if I'm not capable of loving him the way he deserves, I ask. Then you'll learn, Yvonne says simply. Love is a skill. It requires practice and intention and a willingness to be wrong sometimes. You're good at all of those things when the task matters to you. And this matters to you. How do I know it won't compromise the work, I ask. It might, Yvonne says. In the short term, relationships often are chaotic. But long term, the best partnerships are the ones where people are also in love. The work doesn't suffer. It becomes richer. I leave her office and spend the rest of the evening thinking about what it means to be intentional about love, the way I'm intentional about wine. I think about what it would take to build a framework that allows for flexibility, that leaves room for surprise while still maintaining structure. By the next evening, I've figured out what I need to do. Soren gets to work at 4, like he always does. I'm waiting in the cellar, my sanctuary, the place where important things happen now. And when he sees me, I can tell that he's been preparing for this conversation too. He's been thinking about it, organizing his own thoughts, hoping for the right answer. I've built my framework, I tell him, and the framework says yes. I want to try this. I want to try us. Yeah? He smiles, like the world has just rearranged itself into a configuration that makes sense. Yeah, I confirm. But I need to be honest with you about what I'm capable of. I'm going to be difficult sometimes. I'm going to need to think before I act. I'm going to need to think about big feelings before I talk about them. I'm going to sometimes approach love like it's a problem to be solved, rather than an experience to be lived. But I'm going to try. I'm going to try very hard to be the kind of person you deserve. I don't want perfect, Soren says. I want you, the actual you, not a version of you that you've organized and optimized for my benefit. That's who I am, I say. The version that's been organized and optimized. That's my natural state. I know, he says, and I love that about you. I love that you think carefully and deliberately. I love that you have opinions and defend them. I love that you've built something beautiful and precise, and that you're willing to let me into it. I'm terrified, I say. I know that too, he says. But fear and love aren't opposites. They're two sides of the same thing. You're scared because I matter. He steps closer, and I let him. This is the framework I've built. Letting someone in means vulnerability. And vulnerability means risk. And risk is the price of something real. So what happens now, I ask. Now we tell Yvonne, he says. And then we figure out how to navigate this at work. And then we just try. We go to dinner sometimes. We stay at each other's places sometimes. We figure out what we are together. Okay, I say. It's terrifying. It's also the most certain I've been about anything since the moment I first saw him. We find Yvonne in the kitchen, and Soren takes my hand, a public gesture, acclaiming, and tells her, "We're together. We're going to try a relationship." Yvonne looks at our joined hands, and she smiles like she's been waiting for this announcement since the day she hired Soren. "Finally," she says. "I was starting to think I'd miscalculated. Congratulations. Now, let's talk about how we manage this in the workplace so that it doesn't disrupt the menu or the restaurant dynamics." We spend the next hour discussing boundaries, talking about how we'll navigate service, understanding that at work, we're colleagues first and partners second. It's a framework, and it's one that I can understand and work within. That Friday evening, after service, Soren and I go to dinner at a small Italian place in Portland that isn't fancy, but is excellent. We sit at a corner table, and we order wine. Obviously, Soren defers to me on this, though I tell him to order whatever he wants and I'll pair it with the food. And we talk about things that aren't the restaurant. I learned that Soren grew up in Seattle, that his father was a bartender and his mother was a teacher, that he became interested in cocktails because he watched his father approach bartending like it was an art form. I learned that he went to culinary school briefly, but left because he realized he was more interested in beverages than food. I learned that he came to Portland specifically looking for a place that would respect cocktails as seriously as fine dining respects wine. He learns that I grew up in Portland, that my mother was a librarian and my father was an insurance salesman, that I became interested in wine because I was trying to understand my father, to understand what he valued in his life. He learns, that I haven't been in a serious relationship since college because I told myself that work was more important than connection, when the reality was that I was protecting myself from having to be vulnerable. "I think you use precision as armor," Soren says, "and it's not mean, it's just observant." "I do," I acknowledge. "It makes things manageable. It gives me control." "You can't control love," he says. "I know," I say. "That's why I've spent my whole life avoiding it." He reaches across the table and takes my hand. "I'm going to help you get better at this," he says. "Fair warning, it's going to require you to sometimes not know what the answer is. Sometimes it's going to require you to just feel things and not organize them into a system." "I don't like that already," I say, but I'm smiling. "I know," he says. "That's why we're good for each other, because I can help with the messy parts, and you can help me understand that some structure actually makes creativity easier." By the time dinner ends, by the time we walk through Portland at night and end up at his apartment because my apartment is too empty and his feels like a place where we could build something, I understand what Yvonne meant. Love is not something I've built a framework for. Love is the framework. Everything else is just the architecture that allows it to stand. And I'm ready to let it. Chapter 8. Soren, the first kiss. After Nico tells me yes, after we go to dinner and he tells me things he's never told anyone, after we spend the night at his apartment, sleeping tangled together like we've been doing this for years instead of hours, everything feels different. Work feels different because we're navigating the space between professionalism and partnership. At service, we don't touch, don't show anything external. But there's this moment, every night, where our eyes meet across the bar and the wine station, and we're having a conversation that only we can see. The restaurant feels different because people are noticing. The servers whisper. One of the kitchen staff asks Nico if he's happy, and he actually smiles and says yes, which apparently is unprecedented. Margaret comes in and sees us together, sees the way we move around each other with this new awareness, and she cries a little bit into her wine. "I knew it," she tells us. "I knew from the beginning that you two were meant to find each other. This is the most beautiful thing I've seen in this restaurant." But the thing that really changes is how we work together. Before, Soren and I created great things out of respect and the desire to make something beautiful. Now we create great things out of love, and it's a different kind of alchemy. When I design a cocktail pairing, I'm thinking about what will make Nico happy, what will challenge him, what will make him understand something new about how flavor works. When he selects a wine, he's thinking about what will make the cocktail sing, how the two of us can create something together that neither of us could alone. The food critic piece has brought us national attention. We're getting write-ups in regional publications, in some national food magazines. People are talking about the unified menu as the future of fine dining hospitality. And through all of it, Nico and I are finding our rhythm, understanding how to be publicly professional and privately connected simultaneously. About 3 weeks after we officially become a couple, Nico suggests something: the conversations experience. It's a monthly tasting menu, he explains. We're at his apartment, in his kitchen, and he's making risotto while I sit on the counter and steal tastes. One night a month, we close the restaurant to regular service. We design a completely original menu, one that's built specifically as a conversation between wine and cocktails. Every pairing is designed to show what happens when the two mediums are perfectly balanced. That's ambitious, I say. Yvonne thinks it's brilliant, he says. She's already talking about how to market it, how to make it exclusive, limited reservations, premium pricing. She thinks we could fill it every month. You want me to co-design it with you, I say. It's not a question. I want to design it with you, he says. Not just the cocktails while I do the wine. I want us to design the entire experience together. The menu, the pairings, the way we present it to guests. Everything. Okay, I say. Let's do it. The first conversations experience happens on a Tuesday in November. We've sent out invitations to select regulars and invited critics, food writers, and influential people in the Portland restaurant scene. It's Nico's way of saying to the world that this collaboration is serious, that it's not a gimmick. It's a genuine philosophy about how hospitality can work. The menu is small, 4 courses, each with paired wine and cocktail options. Each course is designed to be a genuine conversation between the mediums, each one approaching the same dish from a different angle. The first course is a silky soup made from roasted cauliflower and brown butter, with a subtle sage note. Nico pairs it with a delicate white wine, a Chablis with enough acidity to cut through the richness of the butter. I pair it with a cocktail that uses vodka infused with sage, combined with a touch of vermouth and a subtle bitter component. The wine gives you clarity. The cocktail gives you presence. Together, they create a circle of understanding around the dish. The second course is a perfectly seared duck breast, served with a cherry gastrique and crispy skin. Nico pairs it with a Côte de Rhône, a wine that has enough structure to handle the richness of the duck, but enough finesse to not overwhelm it. I design a cocktail that uses whiskey, a cherry liqueur, a tiny bit of sherry vinegar, and a subtle herb note. The wine is elegant and restrained. The cocktail is bolder, more present. Guests can choose based on their mood or their palate. The third course is a halibut situation. Nico's wine, the Gruner Veltliner, paired with my whiskey ginger honey cocktail. But this time, we present them simultaneously, asking the guests to taste them both and understand how they're different approaches to the same flavor problem. The final course is dessert, a dark chocolate tart with a quenelle of espresso cream. Nico pairs it with a Banyuls. I pair it with a cocktail that's vodka-based, infused with dark chocolate and coffee, combined with Amaro and creme de cacao. Throughout the evening, Nico and I work as a unit. He explains his wines, I explain my cocktails, and we talk about the conversation between them, the way they enhance each other, the way they're designed to make you think about what's possible when two crafts are treated as equals. By the time dinner ends, by the time the last guest has left and we're cleaning up together, I can tell that something has shifted. The conversations experience isn't just successful. It's becoming its own thing, its own entity, something that exists separately from the regular Ponte experience. After we've cleaned everything and locked up, Nico finds me in the wine cellar. It's become our place, the place where we've kissed, where we've worked, where we've built something together. Thank you, he says. For what, I ask. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself, he says. For pushing me to understand that precision and care don't mean rigidity. For loving me even though I'm difficult. You're not difficult, I say. You're exactly right. You're exactly what I need. He kisses me in the wine cellar, surrounded by bottles that represent his knowledge and his care. And I understand that this is what love is supposed to be. Collaboration, conversation, two people making something together that neither could make alone. When we finally leave, when we walk out into the Portland night and head toward his apartment or mine, we still haven't decided where we're going to live, but we're getting there. I'm thinking about how lucky I was to heckle a sommelier at a food festival, and how that moment led to this. I'm thinking about how the best things in life are usually the ones you don't plan for, the ones that arrive unexpectedly and change everything. I'm thinking about how Nico looked at me the first time he showed me that Gruner Veltliner, like he was inviting me into something sacred. And I'm thinking about how I said yes. Chapter 9. Nico, public and private. Living with Soren requires me to recalibrate everything I thought I knew about myself. I thought I valued solitude. Turns out, I was just afraid of disorder. With Soren in my space, the apartment becomes lived in instead of curated. There are cocktail napkins on the coffee table. There are books stacked on the nightstand instead of shelved alphabetically. There are moments where I come home and find dishes in the sink because he was making something experimental with infusions for the next conversations menu. It's chaos. I hate chaos. And yet, I'm beginning to understand that chaos and creativity are not opposites. They're different aspects of the same thing. Living with Soren, I watch him work. He doesn't organize his thoughts before he tries things. He tries things and organizes the results. He makes mistakes and learns from them in real time. And somehow, this results in him creating remarkable things. Cocktails that surprise and delight in ways that careful, methodical planning never could have achieved. He's teaching me, without meaning to, that there's value in improvisation. It's November, and we've been officially together for about a month, living together for 2 weeks. Ponte is thriving. The conversations experience has sold out for 3 months in advance. Other restaurants are reaching out, asking us to consult on menu designs. We've been written up in national publications. And I'm happy, which is unexpected and slightly terrifying. Margaret comes in one evening and orders the conversations experience, even though it's not a conversations night. Even though we're not doing the special menu. She wants to taste the pairing we've chosen for the regular menu that evening. After she finishes, she calls me to her table. "You're different," she says. "You're still precise, still careful about wine, but you're different. You're lighter, happier. It's because of Soren, isn't it?" Partly, I admit. The success of the menu is part of it. But yes, Soren is a big part of it. "He's good for you," Margaret says. "I've watched you for 5 years. I've never seen you as a person before. I've only ever seen you as a sommelier. Now I see you as a person, and that person is someone I genuinely like." After she leaves, I'm sitting with what she's said. For years, I've defined myself entirely by my job. My knowledge of wine, my precision, my ability to understand flavor and select appropriate pairings. I've never thought of myself as a person who could be liked for things outside of my professional competence. Soren likes me for my precision, yes, but he also likes me despite it. He likes the parts of me that are careful and organized because he understands that those parts are how I show love. He likes the parts of me that are vulnerable, that take time to process things, that require patience and understanding. He likes me as a whole person. That's new. That night, after service, I find myself thinking about what love looks like when it's real. Not the movie version, not the version where everything is easy and perfect, but the version where two people actually show up, with all their flaws and complications, and choose each other anyway. Soren's in the kitchen when I get home. He's developing a new cocktail for next month's conversations menu, and there's a kind of organized chaos around him. Bottles, citrus, a notebook where he's written flavor notes. He's tasting something, and his face has that expression of concentration that I've learned means he's thinking deeply about what he's experiencing. "How was service?" he asks, without looking up. "Good," I say. "Busy. Margaret was in, said some kind things about us." He grins at that. "She's the best," he says. "How would you feel about creating a special pairing for her? Her birthday is coming up in December. We could design something specifically for her, something that represents our philosophy about what we do here." "That's kind," I say. "It's not kind," he says, finally looking at me. "It's just recognizing that she's been important to this restaurant and to us. That matters." This is what love looks like with Soren. It's thoughtfulness. It's paying attention to people and their stories and understanding what would matter to them. It's the opposite of my approach, which has historically been to do excellent work and assume that was enough. "Okay," I say, "let's design something for Margaret." We spend the rest of the evening working on it. Soren designing the cocktail pairing, me designing the wine. We're not being intentional about it being togetherness. We're just working parallel to each other, occasionally bouncing ideas, occasionally tasting something and asking the other person for their opinion. With clarity. A Sancerre paired with a light gin cocktail, and moves through complexity, through richness, through layers of flavor and understanding. It ends with something beautiful and dark and deep, the Banyuls and the chocolate cocktail, the same pairing that ended the first conversation's experience. She's going to love this, Soren says. She's going to understand what we're trying to do, I correct, which is more important than loving it. I think she'll do both, he says. When Margaret comes in for her birthday dinner, when we present the specially designed menu to her, she cries. She tastes each pairing carefully. She asks questions. She understands, fully, what we've built and why it matters. This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me, she tells us after dinner. You created something that's specifically designed around understanding me and what I care about. That's love. That's what this place is built on. Love and respect, and the understanding that flavor is just another way of communicating how much someone means to you. After Margaret leaves, Soren and I look at each other, and we both understand that we've created something bigger than a restaurant. We've created a philosophy about how hospitality can work. We've created a space where people feel understood and cared for, where their preferences and their stories matter. That's what love is supposed to be. Not just the romantic version between two people, but the bigger version that extends to everyone you touch, the guests, the staff, the people who believe in what you're doing. I love you, I tell Soren. It's not the first time I've said it, but it feels different now, feels more certain, feels like a statement of fact rather than a declaration of emotion. I love you too, he says. And I love that you've created a space where love is just part of how we work, where precision and care are the same thing. That's because of you, I say. I wouldn't have understood that without you. We understood it together, he says. That's the whole point. And it is. Chapter 10. Soren. The distance widens. In December, Yvonne tells us that Ponte has been nominated for a James Beard Award. It's a validation of everything we've built, a recognition that what we're doing is genuinely innovative and important. It's also when things start to shift. Nico becomes consumed by the nomination in a way that I haven't seen before. He's already precise and careful, but the possibility of national recognition amplifies that. He starts spending longer hours in the wine cellar, reorganizing the program, developing new selections, trying to make sure that every single bottle in our inventory is absolutely perfect for the inevitable inspection by the Beard Foundation people. He stops coming home some nights. He sleeps at the restaurant, in the small office next to the cellar, because he says he wants to be there if something needs adjusting. The nomination is based on the unified menu, I point out, one evening when he comes home at midnight, smelling like wine and looking like he hasn't slept in 30 hours. It's not just about your wine program. It's about what we've built together. I know that, he says, but his tone suggests he doesn't actually believe it. But the wine program is my responsibility. I need to make sure it's perfect. I need to be the sommelier that deserves this nomination. You are, I say. You've already earned it. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. I'm not trying to prove anything, he says, and it's clearly a lie. I'm just being professional. This is when I start to understand that there's a difference between Nico's precision being a feature of how he shows love, and Nico's precision being a defense mechanism. When he's anxious, when he's scared, precision becomes a wall. It becomes a way of controlling everything so that he never has to feel vulnerable or uncertain. By mid-December, the distance between us is obvious. He's at the restaurant constantly. Even when he's home, he's mentally still at the restaurant. He's thinking about wine selections. He's thinking about service. He's thinking about everything except me. We barely see each other, I say, one night when he finally comes home before midnight. We see each other at work, he says. That's not the same, I say. That's professional. That's us doing our jobs. I miss you. I miss actually talking to you about things that aren't the restaurant. Everything is the restaurant right now, he says. And there's an edge to his voice that suggests he's annoyed that I'm making this about us, when he has more important things to worry about. This nomination could change everything. It could change the trajectory of Ponte. It could make us a destination restaurant. It could also be something great that you don't need to destroy yourself trying to achieve, I say. Nico, you're already there. You've already done the work. The nomination is just an acknowledgement of what you've already accomplished. You don't understand, he says. This is important. This is validation that everything I've done in my career matters. I do understand, I say. And I'm trying very hard to be patient, to remember that this is his fear talking, that underneath the perfectionism is someone who's terrified. But I also understand that there's a difference between caring about your work and using your work to avoid anything emotional that feels uncertain. I'm not avoiding anything, he says, and he says it with such certainty that I know it's not true. He's avoiding me. He's avoiding the vulnerability of a relationship that requires him to be present and imperfect and honest about his feelings. Yes, you are, I say, and I get it. I understand why. But I also need you to understand that a relationship requires showing up. It requires being present. And right now, you're checked out. I'm not checked out, he says. I'm just focused. There's a difference. But there isn't, really. Not from where I'm sitting. In the next 2 weeks, I throw myself into my work, too. I'm developing new cocktails for the Conversations menu. I'm experimenting with house-made infusions, with unusual flavor combinations, with things that push the boundaries of what a cocktail can be. It's partly because I'm excited about the work. It's partly because if Nico's going to retreat into the restaurant, then maybe I should meet him there. Maybe, if we can't be partners in our personal life, we can at least be partners at work. By Christmas, there's this strange dynamic where Nico and I are professionally brilliant. We're creating the best menus of our career. We're pushing each other in ways that result in genuinely innovative pairings. And personally, we're barely speaking. He comes home late, I come home late. We sleep in the same bed, but we don't touch. We're polite to each other in a way that suggests friendship rather than love. Margaret notices, of course. She comes in on Christmas Eve, just her, alone, which is unusual. She orders a Conversations experience, even though we're not doing the special menu because it's a holiday. Yvonne accommodates this because Margaret is Margaret, and certain guests transcend normal operating procedures. After she finishes, I sit with her for a moment at our table. "How are things?" she asks. I could lie. I could say everything is fine. But Margaret has earned the right to honesty. Complicated, I admit. Nico is in his head about the Beard Award nomination. I'm trying to be supportive, but he's kind of withdrawn. We're not really connected right now. This happens, Margaret says. She's sipping her wine, and she looks thoughtful in a way that suggests she's drawn on personal experience. When success becomes possible, when the stakes get higher, sometimes people retreat into what they think they need to do to earn it. He thinks he needs to be perfect. He's not letting himself be human. How do I help with that? I ask. You set a boundary, Margaret says. You tell him that you love him, but you can't be in a relationship with someone who's not present. You tell him that the nomination is wonderful, but it's not worth losing what you have. And then you let him decide what matters more. What if he chooses the nomination? I ask. Then you'll have your answer, Margaret says gently. But I don't think you will. I think underneath all the perfectionism is someone who knows, very clearly, that you matter more than anything else. After Margaret leaves, I spend the rest of Christmas Eve thinking about what she's said. I think about confrontation. I think about ultimatums. I think about whether I have the capacity to hold a boundary with someone I love as much as I love Nico. On Christmas morning, I make a decision. I'm not going to work until Nico and I actually talk, about what's happening between us, about how we got from being a couple who couldn't stop touching each other to being colleagues who barely look at each other. I find him in the cellar, of course. Where else would he be on Christmas morning? We need to talk, I say. I know, he says, and the fact that he says this without arguing, without defending himself, tells me something about how aware he's been of the distance between us. You're using work as a shield, I say. You're retreating into the wine program because you're scared. And I understand that. But I can't be in a relationship with someone who's checked out. I won't do it. I'm not checked out, he says, but his voice is quieter now. I'm just trying to prove that you deserve the nomination. I know, I finish. But you've already proven it. The nomination exists because you've already done the work. You don't need to destroy yourself trying to earn something you've already earned. He sits down on a wine crate, and for the first time in weeks, he looks genuinely vulnerable. I'm terrified, he says. If I stop being perfect, if I stop being the sommelier who has everything figured out, who am I? What if everything falls apart? It won't fall apart, I say. I sit down next to him. Nico, the restaurant won't fall apart if you take a break. The wine program won't fall apart if you go home and sleep. And our relationship won't fall apart if you admit that you're scared. What if it does? He asks. What if I'm fundamentally not capable of balancing work and a relationship? What if I always choose work? Then we'll have that conversation, I say. But I don't think you will. I think underneath the perfectionism is someone who wants to be loved and who's terrified that if he's not perfect, he won't be lovable. He's quiet for a long time. Then he says, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be imperfect and loved simultaneously. Neither do I admit, but we can figure it out together. That's what partners do. He finally looks at me, really looks at me, and I can see the relief in his face when he realizes that I'm still here, that I'm not going anywhere, that even though he's been distant and withdrawn and using perfectionism as a shield, I'm still choosing him. I love you, he says, even though I'm terrible at showing it. You're not terrible at it, I say. You're just scared. But I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere. He pulls me close, and for the first time in weeks, we're not just colleagues or people sharing an apartment. We're partners. We're people who've chosen each other, who are learning how to do this together. It's not perfect, but it's real. And that's what matters. Chapter 11. Nico, the conflict emerges. After Christmas, after Soren tells me that I'm using perfectionism as a shield, and I have to admit that he's right, things improve, but they're not perfect. We're still working on it. We're still figuring out how to be a couple when one of us, me, is naturally inclined toward isolation, and the other, him, is naturally inclined toward openness and connection. In early January, 2 weeks before the Beard Foundation judges are scheduled to visit, my father calls. He never calls. In our entire relationship, my father has been someone who expresses care through constraint. He's not a person who makes phone calls or shares feelings or does anything that might result in vulnerability. So when he calls, I know something is wrong. I'm retiring, he says, without preamble. I'm moving to Arizona. I wanted you to know. My father has been an insurance salesman for 40 years. Insurance sales is the kind of job where you show up every day and maintain systems and do the work that needs to be done without expecting recognition or acknowledgement. In many ways, he's the reason I became the sommelier that I am. I learned precision and structure from him. When? I ask. Next month, he says. I wanted to do something before I retired, though. I wanted to come to the restaurant. I wanted to see what you've built. Now? I ask, and I hear the panic in my voice. You want to come to the restaurant now? When we're about to be visited by the Beard Foundation? When everything is about to change? I don't know when I'll get another opportunity, my father says. I'm moving across the country. I wanted to see what you'd created with my own eyes before I go. I agree, because what else can I do? I'm his son. If he wants to visit before he retires, I should accommodate that. But internally, I'm spiraling. My father, in my space, judging my work. My father, seeing what I've built and either approving or disapproving. My father, the physical embodiment of everything I've ever been trying to achieve. I tell Soren that evening. Your father is coming? He asks. Next week, I say. I don't know exactly when. He said he'd call when he has the details. He wants to experience the restaurant. That's great, Soren says, and his tone suggests he genuinely believes this. Nico, that's wonderful. Your father is going to see what you've accomplished, and he's going to be proud. You don't know that, I say. You don't know my father. He's not the kind of person who expresses pride. He expresses expectations, and mostly, he expects you to meet them without recognition. Maybe he's changed, Soren suggests. Maybe, I say, but I don't believe it. People don't change, or if they do, they change slowly. And my father has had my entire life to become a different kind of person, and he hasn't. I don't expect him to start now. The week before my father is scheduled to arrive, I descend into the kind of perfectionism that makes the weeks leading up to the Beard nomination look casual. I reorganize the entire wine program, not because anything is wrong with it, but because I need to reorganize it. I need to feel in control of something. Soren watches this happen with the kind of patience that suggests he's trying very hard not to say, I told you so. Nico, he says, one evening when I've literally rearranged 3 sections of the cellar. You need to stop. You're going to give yourself an ulcer. I'm fine, I say, even though I'm clearly not fine. You're doing the thing again, he says. You're using work to protect yourself from feeling anything about your father coming. And I'm going to tell you the same thing I told you at Christmas. It's not going to help. You can reorganize the wine program 100 times, and your father is still going to be your father, and you're still going to want his approval. I hate that he's right. My father arrives on a Thursday evening. He's an older version of me. Same precise movements, same careful way of observing things before engaging. He shows up at the restaurant at 5 o'clock, before service, and he doesn't hug me. He just nods and says, "Show me what you've built." I give him a tour. I explain the wine program, the philosophy behind our selections, the way I approach each pairing. I walk him through the unified menu concept, explain how Soren and I created it together, how two different mediums can work in conversation rather than competition. My father listens. He asks technical questions. He wants to understand the depth of the program, the sourcing, the reasoning behind specific selections. He's being exactly the way he's always been. Precise, critical, focused on whether the work is good enough. It's impressive, he says after the tour. This is a serious program. You should be proud. It's not the kind of praise that would make most people happy, but it's more than my father usually gives to anything. It's recognition. It's the closest thing to approval that he's probably capable of. Thank you, I say. Then service begins, and my father sits at a table in the corner with a reservation under a false name to avoid anyone knowing he's my father. I watch him experience the restaurant through his eyes. I watch him taste the wine pairings. I watch him taste Soren's cocktails. And I can see the moment when he understands what we've done. It's not just a good wine program. It's not just a good cocktail program. It's a philosophy about how service works, how respect and precision are the same thing, how the work we do matters because it makes people's lives better. After service, he finds me in the cellar. Soren is there too, which is a violation of my normal protocol, but which I now understand is actually essential because Soren is part of this. I owe you an apology, my father says. I have literally never heard him say those words in his entire life. For what, I ask. For not understanding what you were trying to do here, he says. When you told me you wanted to work in wine, when you said you were building a program, I thought it was a hobby, something you'd eventually outgrow in favor of more practical work. But this is serious. This is meaningful. This is the kind of work that actually matters in the world. Thank you, I say, and I'm trying not to cry, which is not a dignified thing to do in front of your father and your partner. I'm proud of you, he says. It comes out stiffly, like he's not used to saying these words, like they require a kind of vulnerability that doesn't come naturally to him. I came here expecting to see a nice restaurant. Instead, I see a philosophy about how to treat people with respect. That's something I should have told you years ago, that I was proud of you, that what you were doing mattered. Dad, I start, but I don't know how to finish. The cocktails are remarkable too, he says, looking at Soren. Soren, is that right? You and Nico created this together? We did, Soren says. He taught me about wine. I taught him about cocktails. We met in the middle. That's partnership, my father says. That's what I should have taught my son, and I didn't. I taught him precision and structure, but I didn't teach him how to partner with other people. I'm glad he learned it anyway. After my father leaves, he's staying in a hotel. He's careful about boundaries even in this moment of emotional admission. I'm sitting in the wine cellar with Soren, and I'm feeling something I don't entirely know how to name. That was intense, Soren says. Yeah, I say. He's never been that vulnerable. He's never apologized for anything. I've spent my entire life trying to prove myself to him, and he just acknowledged that I'd already done it. How do you feel? Soren asks. Relieved, I say, and also kind of devastated that it took him this long, and grateful that I have you here, that I don't have to process this alone. Soren reaches over and takes my hand. You're not alone anymore, he says. That's what being a partner means. You get to have people who help you carry the difficult things. Later that week, after my father has left Portland and returned to his normal life, after he's called twice just to talk, which he's apparently decided is his new retirement hobby, I realize something. I've spent so much of my life trying to be perfect so that other people would approve of me. And in doing so, I've nearly lost the one person who actually matters. Soren. The nomination comes through in February. Ponte is nominated for Outstanding Service, and I'm personally nominated for Best Sommelier in a Fine Dining Restaurant. It's an enormous validation. It's everything I've worked toward. But when the letter comes, when I see my name in print, the first person I want to tell is Soren. Not because he's a colleague, but because he's my partner, and he's been with me through all of it. The obsession, the perfectionism, the fear, the eventual understanding that success isn't actually about being perfect. It's about doing work that matters and sharing it with people who understand why it matters. We did it, Soren says, when I show him the letter. I did it, I say. You did it. We did it together. That's what I meant, he says, and he kisses me in the wine cellar, surrounded by bottles that represent 6 years of my work and 6 months of our collaboration, and a lifetime of learning that love is just another system to understand. It just requires more vulnerability than wine does. Chapter 12. Soren, fighting for us. In March, everything falls apart. Yvonne gets an offer from a restaurant group in San Francisco. They want to open a high-end restaurant, and they want Nico to be the sommelier and wine director. They're offering more money than he's making at Ponte. They're offering equity. They're offering a significant role in building a new concept from the ground up. They're not offering for me to come with him. Nico gets the call on a Tuesday, and he doesn't tell me until the following evening. We're getting ready for service, and he says, very casually, I got a job offer from San Francisco. The email arrives on a Tuesday morning, and Nico's hands are steady as he reads it the first time. The second reading, his hands are less steady. Michelin-starred sommelier position. San Francisco. Salary that would finally make his father nod with approval. Wine selection that represents the pinnacle of the industry. A name builder position. The kind of opportunity that doesn't come around twice. He reads it 3 times before showing Soren, which means Soren knows it matters. San Francisco, Soren says, neutrally, but his hand goes absolutely still above the liquor ledger. They're offering relocation assistance. They know I'd need a few weeks' notice here. Nico hears himself speaking like he's narrating someone else's life. Professional. Factual. Lying through his teeth about how much air has suddenly left the room. That's incredible, Soren says. And he means it. That's the worst part. He actually means it. That's what you've been working toward. It's one of the positions I've been working toward, Nico clarifies quietly. The prestigious one. The one that proves something. Nico doesn't answer because they both know what Soren means. The one that proves Nico isn't just his father's son. The one that transforms him from competent into undeniable. He walks through the next 3 days in a strange clarity. He researches San Francisco. He calculates what the apartment rent would be versus what he'd earn. He imagines wine tastings with people whose names he recognizes from industry publications. He imagines his father's face, finally relaxed, finally certain that his son had amounted to something. Then he imagines Ponte without Soren moving behind the bar. Imagines not knowing what wine he'd pour, what terrible joke he'd make during the Friday evening rush. Imagines the silence where Soren's ridiculous commentary should be. Imagines being successful and completely, systematically alone. On Friday, Nico sits at the bar during the pre-opening setup and types a response. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm honored. However, I've decided to remain in my current position as my commitment lies in the work I'm doing here. Soren comes around the corner, sees Nico's face, doesn't ask. But he stops. He puts down whatever he was carrying, and he waits, just waits, present, exactly as Nico has learned he always does. I told them no, Nico says quietly. Soren's expression doesn't change, but something in his shoulders softens. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Nico looks at him directly. Because I don't want to be successful in San Francisco. I want to be here, with you. That's the thing I've actually been building toward. I just took a while to notice. Nico. So that's where my commitment is, Nico continues. Not in impressing people I've never met. Not in proving something to someone who should have already believed in me. In this. In you. In us. Soren finally smiles. And it's the kind that settles things. That's the least like a cocktail experiment I've ever heard you be. I'm capable of depth, Nico says. I just needed you to help me find the bottom. Are you thinking about it? I ask. even though part of me already knows the answer. I can see it in the way he's been looking at the wine program, like he's saying goodbye to something he loves. I don't know, he says, which is his way of saying yes. It's a lot of money. It's a significant opportunity. It's something I've always wanted. We've built something here, I say, and I'm trying very hard not to sound panicked. The conversations experience, the unified menu, the collaboration. We've built something that's genuinely innovative. I know, he says. That's what makes this so complicated. What he doesn't say, but what I hear anyway, is San Francisco is more important than you. The opportunity is more important than us. Service that night is a disaster. Not in terms of execution. We're still professional, still delivering excellent pairings, still doing the work that we're known for. But in terms of energy, we're disconnected. We're not looking at each other. We're not having the silent conversation that usually runs parallel to service. We're just two people doing a job, and the job has become the only thing that matters. After service, I don't go home. I go to Margaret's house. I know where she lives because I've delivered wine there before, because she's mentioned it casually enough that I remember. I show up on her doorstep at midnight, and I look terrible enough that she doesn't even ask questions. She just lets me in. Nico got a job offer, I tell her, in San Francisco. He's going to take it. He hasn't said that, Margaret points out. He will, I say. I can see it in how he's been looking at things. He's already mentally left. He's already decided that the opportunity is more important than what we have. Or, Margaret says, handing me a cup of tea even though it's midnight and tea seems insufficient. He's still figuring things out, and you're projecting your fear onto the situation. He didn't even tell me about the offer, I say. He brought it up like he was mentioning the weather, like it was casual, like we haven't spent the last 6 months building something together, like I'm not the reason half of what he's created at Ponte actually works. Margaret lets me sit with that for a moment. Then she says, "What do you want to happen?" I want him to choose us, I say. I want him to say no to San Francisco and commit to what we're building here. I want him to understand that some opportunities are only valuable if you get to share them with the person you love. Have you told him that? Margaret asks. Not yet, I admit. Then maybe start there, she suggests. Maybe tell him what you want instead of waiting for him to figure it out. I go home at 2 in the morning, and Nico is awake, sitting in the living room with a glass of wine and a notebook full of notes about what the San Francisco position would involve. I need to talk to you, I say. I know, he says. I've been sitting here all evening waiting for you to come home and tell me that I'm making a mistake. Are you? I ask. Are you making a mistake by considering leaving Portland? I don't know, he says. It's a significant opportunity. It's the kind of position that could define the rest of my career. It's a chance to build something from the ground up with a restaurant group that understands my philosophy. Here, I say, build it here. We've already started building it. We've already created the conversations experience. We've already shown that this philosophy works. We could expand it here instead of starting over in San Francisco. It's not the same, he says. Why not? I ask. Why is starting from scratch with a restaurant group more appealing than expanding what we've already proven? He's quiet for a long time. Then he says, because in San Francisco, I'd be the expert. I'd be the person who knows everything. I wouldn't have to negotiate with a partner or worry about whether I'm good enough, because I'd be the one setting the standard. And there it is, the real fear underneath everything. So San Francisco is really about ego, I say. And I'm not being mean, I'm just being honest. It's about control. It's about not having to be vulnerable with another person. It's not that simple, he says. It is, actually, I say. And it's the same fear that made you pull away at Christmas. It's the same fear that makes you want to retreat into perfectionism whenever anything feels uncertain. You're terrified of depending on another person. You're terrified of that kind of vulnerability. That's not fair, he says. It is, though, I say. And it's also human. It's also something we can work through, if you're willing. But I'm not going to follow you to San Francisco. I'm not going to uproot my life and abandon the work I'm doing here just so that you can avoid being vulnerable in a relationship. So what does that mean? He asks. It means if you take the San Francisco job, we're done, I say. I'm not going to be the person who waits around while you figure out your career. I'm not going to be secondary to your professional ambitions. I'm not good at competing for attention, and I won't. You're asking me to choose between you and my career, he says. No, I say. I'm asking you to choose between you and yourself. I'm asking you to decide whether you want a life that's just about professional achievement or whether you want a life that includes partnership. But I'm not going to help you choose professional achievement. I've already done that work. He looks at me, and I can see the conflict in his face. The part of him that wants to run, that wants to go to San Francisco and be the best sommelier in a prestigious restaurant, versus the part of him that knows, underneath the fear, that what we're building here matters more. I'm sorry, he says. Are you sorry you got the offer? Or sorry you're considering taking it, I ask. Both, he says. I'm sorry that something I should be excited about is threatening what I have with you. And I'm sorry that my first instinct was to take it without considering what you wanted, without considering what we wanted. Service misstep. The misstep comes on a Friday, a regulars Friday, the night when Marcus and his wife come in, the night when every timing must be perfect. Course 3 is where it goes wrong. Nico has moved the Riesling to the front of his station, temperature precisely calibrated. Soren reaches for it. Muscle memory, routine. Grabbing the glass Nico has already picked up. Their hands collide. The Riesling wobbles. They both freeze. The glass steadies. Nico's expression goes carefully neutral, but Soren sees it, the flicker of something. Surprise. Disappointment. Then Nico pours a Vermentino for course 4, a wine that, in his meticulous notes, he's paired with Soren's signature cocktail, a gin-based creation with cardamom and bitter orange. But Soren, running hot, distracted, has substituted the cocktail. He's used a different spirit, vodka instead. The pairing is all wrong. The wine's acidity fights with the vodka's neutral grain. It's not a disaster, but it's a crack, a visible, undeniable crack. Marcus notices. Soren can see it in the way his fork hesitates, the way his eyes flick to his wife's glass, the small question mark that appears on his face. The kitchen goes quiet. Not actually quiet. Pans are moving, tickets are printing, but it's the kind of quiet that happens when two people who have been in sync suddenly aren't. When the partnership that's supposed to be invisible becomes very, very visible. Yvonne sees it from her position near the door. She sees Nico's jaw tighten. She sees Soren's hand shake slightly as he reaches for the next bottle. The rest of service continues, but the ease is gone. The wordless conversation that usually runs under everything has turned into an argument. Nico pours with slightly more precision than usual, harder, sharper movements. Soren's cocktails become more elaborate, more showy, as if he's trying to prove something. By the time Marcus and his wife leave, the damage is done. Not to the meal. The food was excellent. The pairings recovered. But to them. In the cellar afterward, Soren tries to explain. I was adapting. I thought it would be better with... I know what you thought, Nico says quietly. You didn't ask. You didn't think to check with me first. Because we don't usually check, Soren says, and it comes out more aggressive than intended. We usually just trust each other. We usually don't make mistakes, Nico responds. There's a moment where they just stand there, surrounded by bottles, and the foundation feels less stable than it did that morning. Romantic doubt. At 3 in the morning, Soren lies awake in the apartment they've been sharing for 3 months. Nico is in the other room, sleeping. Or pretending to sleep. It's hard to tell. The misstep haunts him, not because of Marcus or the failed pairing, but because of what it revealed. That the magic between them might not be magic at all. It might just be novelty. Chemistry that works when everything is easy, but shatters the moment something is difficult. He thinks about Nico's face when the cocktail wasn't right. The disappointment. The way his shoulders went rigid. The way his hands moved more precisely afterward. Like he was rebuilding the walls that had started to come down. What if they confused professional chemistry for something deeper? What if they're actually too different, and the only thing holding them together is that they're both so good at what they do that they mistook competence for compatibility? Soren has always been the person who adapts, the bartender who reads the room, who improvises, who makes something beautiful from whatever's available. But Nico doesn't adapt. Nico builds systems. Nico knows exactly what he wants and executes with precision. Maybe that worked when it was just about wine and cocktails. Maybe 2 different approaches to the same goal is interesting in the context of service. But in the context of a relationship, in the context of sharing a life, maybe Nico was right to hesitate. Maybe his instinct to run to San Francisco wasn't about his career at all. Maybe it was his way of recognizing that them, was always going to be too hard. Soren gets out of bed at 4 a.m. and sits on the kitchen counter with a glass of water he doesn't really want, thinking about how he's the person who always makes things work. But what if there are some things that can't be fixed by good timing and better improvisation? What if there are some incompatibilities that love by itself can't bridge? He thinks about Nico, sleeping in the next room, about how he'll have to wake up and go to Ponte and pretend that they didn't just discover their partnership is fragile, that they might actually be too different after all. By sunrise, he hasn't slept. He's made coffee he doesn't drink and replayed the evening a dozen times, each time finding new evidence that the foundation is cracking. Not because of one failed pairing, but because at their core, they want different things. Nico wants safety. Soren wants freedom. And maybe, just maybe, those things are actually incompatible after all. What do you want? I ask him. Not what you think you should want, or what you think will make you successful. What do you actually want? He's quiet for so long that I think he's not going to answer. Then he says, I want this. I want you. I want to build the conversations experience into something bigger. I want to prove to myself that I can be in a relationship and be good at my work simultaneously. I want to choose something that's uncertain because you matter more than certainty. Then call them, I say. Call San Francisco and tell them no. Okay, he says, but I need to tell you something first. I need to tell you that I love you. And I need to tell you that saying no to San Francisco is the most terrifying thing I've ever done because it means committing to this, to us, to the uncertainty of building something together, instead of choosing something that I know I would be excellent at. I know, I say, and I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere. He calls San Francisco the next morning. He tells them that he's honored by the offer, but that he's committed to a project in Portland that requires his full attention. He tells them that he's choosing to build something here instead. And then he comes home to me. I'm sorry, he says. I'm sorry I even considered leaving. I'm sorry I made you have to fight for us. You didn't make me do anything, I say. You just needed to understand what matters more. Now you do. That evening, we go to Ponte, and we tell Yvonne. She's not surprised. Apparently, she could see that this offer was coming before either of us did. Good, she says, because I was about to tell you that I want to start a whole separate restaurant built on the conversations experience concept. A restaurant where every course is designed as a conversation between wine and cocktails. And I need both of you committed to build it. It's the best news we could have gotten. It's validation that what we've created matters. It's proof that we don't need to leave Portland to build something extraordinary. It's proof that sometimes choosing love is the most successful choice you can make. Chapter 13. Nico, the conversations experience. After I turn down San Francisco, after I choose Soren instead of the safety of professional achievement, something shifts in how I approach the work. I'm no longer trying to prove anything. I'm no longer using the wine program as a shield or a way of proving my worth. I'm just doing the work because I love it, because it matters, because it's a way of communicating something important to the people who experience it. Yvonne's proposal for a separate restaurant dedicated to the conversations philosophy is both exciting and terrifying. It means starting something completely new. It means expanding what Soren and I have built at Ponte into its own concept. It means building a restaurant that's designed entirely around the principle that wine and cocktails are equal partners in hospitality. Soren throws himself into the planning with the kind of energy that I've learned comes from genuine excitement rather than anxiety. We spend evenings designing menus, talking about how to approach a restaurant that's built entirely on the unified menu philosophy. What if, Soren suggests one evening, every table got the tasting menu, but they could choose wine or cocktail pairings for each course? Or they could do mixed pairings, wine for one course, cocktail for another. That's flexible, I say. I'm starting to think flexibility is actually good, which is not a thought I've ever had before. But it requires education. We need to help guests understand what they're choosing. We can do that, he says. We can have cards at each course that explain the philosophy of both options. We can give people the language to understand what they're tasting. Like wine education, I say, but for cocktails. Exactly, Soren says. You've been doing that with wine for years. Why shouldn't we do it with cocktails? By May, we have a building. It's a small space, maybe 80 seats, on a quiet street in Portland. Yvonne has financed the opening and given us complete creative control. She trusts what we've built, which means we're responsible for proving that she was right to trust us. The wine program for conversations. That's what we're calling the restaurant. Just conversations, no experience anymore. Is the most intentional program I've ever built. Every single wine in the cellar is there for a specific reason. Every bottle represents a conversation we want to have with guests about what wine can be. The cocktail program is equally thoughtful. Soren has sourced ingredients like no other bartender I've met. He's working with local honey producers, with farmers who grow specific herbs, with distilleries that are doing unusual things with spirits. Every ingredient in every cocktail has a story and a purpose. We spend weeks designing the physical space. The wine cellar is slightly larger than the one at Ponte, but it's built on the same principles: cool, dark, intimate. The bar is visible to the dining room, which means guests can watch the craft happening. The kitchen is separated by a partial wall so that people can see the cook's hands without being distracted by the full restaurant choreography. Margaret comes to the soft opening in June. It's a small dinner, just a few staff and close friends testing everything before we open to the public. She sits at a table in the corner, and she tastes her way through the entire menu. By the end of the evening, she's crying. This is the dream, she tells Soren and me. This is exactly what you two were always meant to build. This is a restaurant that's built entirely on the principle that love and respect are the foundation of hospitality. That's what we're trying to achieve, I say. You've already achieved it, she says. Now you're going to show other people how to do it. The opening night of Conversations is in July. We're booked solid for 3 months in advance, which is both exciting and terrifying. The pressure is enormous. We've promised something specific, a completely unified approach to wine and cocktail pairing, and we need to deliver on that promise every single night. But we've been building toward this for so long that when it actually happens, when we pour the first wine of the first course for the first table, I feel less pressure and more purpose. This is what I was supposed to be doing. Not just working in wine, but building a philosophy about how hospitality can work. Not just doing my job, but doing it alongside someone who challenges me, who makes me better, who reminds me that precision is just another word for care. By the end of the opening night, by the time we close the restaurant and we're in the back counting the till and celebrating the fact that every table was satisfied, that every pairing worked, that every guest left understanding what we're trying to do, I'm thinking about what Soren said to me months ago, that some opportunities are only valuable if you get to share them with the person you love. San Francisco would have been a significant career opportunity. Opening Conversations is a significantly better one because I get to do it with Soren. I find him in the bar, wiping down bottles, and I just watch him for a moment. The way he moves, the precision of how he arranges things, the care he puts into every single action. Because care is how you show love. Thank you, I say. For what, he asks. For making me choose this, I say. For making me choose us. For making me understand that the work is only meaningful if I get to do it with you. He sets down the bottle and pulls me close. I love you, he says, and I love what we built, and I'm going to love watching us build more. Standing in the bar of our restaurant, surrounded by bottles we've chosen together, surrounded by the physical embodiment of our collaboration, I understand what my father finally understood, that some work is meaningful because it helps people, and some work is meaningful because it's a way of expressing love. This is both. This is all of that. And I'm grateful every single day that I was terrified enough to take the risk. Chapter 14. Soren, building a future together. By September, Conversations has been open for 2 months, and we're building something that matters. The restaurant is thriving. We're getting write-ups in national publications. We're becoming known as the place to go if you want to experience what happens when wine and cocktails are treated as equal partners. And Nico has changed. He's still precise, still careful, still the person who organizes things methodically, but he's learned to be those things without using them as shields. He's learned to be vulnerable at work. He's learned to let me see his fear and his uncertainty and his moments where he doesn't know the answer. One evening in September, we're lying in bed in the apartment we've moved into together, a small place in Portland that's ours, not his, which is something I had to push him to understand. If we're building a life together, the life has to be built together. I want to propose to you, I tell him. It just comes out because we've been talking about it, because it's the natural next step, because I'm tired of waiting for him to be the one to ask. I'm supposed to propose to you, he says, but he's smiling. I've been planning it. Well, I'm doing it first, I say. I get out of bed, which is kind of ridiculous because I should probably do this in a more romantic setting, but some of the best moments with Nico happen in the most everyday contexts. Nico, I love you. I love building things with you. I love that you challenge me and that you listen to me and that you've learned to let me love you in all the complicated ways that love requires. I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me? He's crying, which is new. Nico doesn't usually cry, but he's been crying more lately. It's part of the whole vulnerability thing he's been working on. Yes, he says. Absolutely yes. But I want to do this properly. I want to take you somewhere beautiful and ask you the way I've been planning. I want to give you the proposal that you deserve. Okay, I say, I'll let you have that, but I'm serious about this. I want to marry you. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. I want to keep building things with you. I want that too, he says. I want it so much that it scares me. But it's a different kind of scary than before. It's not scary because I'm uncertain about you. It's scary because it matters so much that I'm afraid of messing it up. You're not going to mess it up, I tell him. And even if you do, I'm going to be there. That's what marriage is. It's choosing to keep showing up, even when things are hard. He proposes 2 weeks later. We go to the coast, to Cannon Beach, where we've been several times, where it feels like we have a history, even though we've only known each other for less than a year. He's organized it without telling me, which requires an incredible amount of coordination, given that we basically live in the same apartment. We walk on the beach in the late afternoon. The sun is beginning to set, and it's just us and a few scattered people walking dogs. When we get to Haystack Rock, when the light is turning golden, he stops walking and turns to face me. I have a speech, he says. I've organized it very carefully. I'm going to say it now. Okay, I say, trying not to smile at the fact that he's written out his proposal like it's a wine program that requires perfect execution. I came to the food festival in Portland, thinking I knew everything about wine, he says. I had a system, a philosophy, an understanding of how things should work. And then you heckled me, and everything changed. You challenged me. You made me question whether my system was actually serving the work, or whether it was just protecting me from risk. You're getting romantic now, right? I ask. Let me finish, he says. He pulls out a ring, simple, white gold, elegant. Just like him. Over the last 6 months, you've taught me that precision and vulnerability are compatible. You've taught me that love is just another system to understand, except it requires letting go of control and trusting another person. You've taught me that collaboration isn't about loss of identity. It's about creating something bigger than either of us could alone. He gets down on one knee. I love you, he says. I love the way you challenged me at the food festival. I love the way you've helped me understand that my work matters more when it's shared with someone I care about. I love the way you're willing to be patient with me when I'm struggling. I love the way you understand that I show love through precision and structure, and you've learned to see that as care instead of coldness. Will you marry me? Yes, I say. Absolutely, completely, without reservation, yes. He puts the ring on my finger, and we kiss on the beach while the sun is setting, and I'm thinking about how lucky I am to have heckling a sommelier have led to this. That evening, we go to dinner at a small restaurant in Cannon Beach, and we tell everyone we see that we're engaged. The servers, the hostess, the couple at the next table, we're that couple. We're obnoxiously in love and completely unashamed about it. By the time we drive back to Portland, I'm thinking about what the future looks like. A wedding. A house, probably. Maybe expanding conversations to other cities. Maybe teaching other restaurants how to approach the unified menu philosophy. Maybe, eventually, having kids who grow up understanding that work and love are both important. That precision can be an expression of care. That building things with another person is what makes life meaningful. What are you thinking about? Nico asks while he's driving. The future, I say. All of it. all the things we're going to build. I'm terrified, he says, but I'm also completely certain that you're the person I want to be terrified with. That's the best kind of love, I say, the kind where you're scared and you do it anyway because the person next to you matters more than the fear. We listen to music and drive through the night, and I'm thinking about how sometimes the best things in life are the ones you don't plan for. The job you take because you need money, the restaurant where you find collaboration and love simultaneously, the person who heckles you at a food festival and somehow becomes the person you want to spend the rest of your life with. Life is improvisation, and I'm grateful that I've found a partner who's learning to improvise with me. Chapter 15. Nico, Family Reunion. 3 months after Soren proposes to me at the beach. Or technically, I proposed to him at the beach, but that's our story and we're both equally proud of it. My father calls to say he's flying back to Portland for the wedding. My father, who moved to Arizona to retire. My father, who said goodbye to Portland with the assumption that he wouldn't be back except for occasional visits. My father, who apparently understands that his son's wedding is an event significant enough to require his presence. I'm not coming alone, he says. I'm bringing Karen. Karen is my father's girlfriend. I've never met her. I didn't even know she existed until 2 months ago when my father mentioned her casually in a phone conversation. The fact that he's bringing her to the wedding suggests something significant, that he's ready for people to understand that he's changed, that he's capable of partnership and connection, that his retirement isn't just about work ending, but about life beginning. We're having the wedding at Conversations. Yvonne has offered the space, and it feels right to get married where we've been building something together. The ceremony is small, just close friends, family, the Ponte staff, the Conversation staff, 150 people, which is small by most standards, but enormous by mine. Soren's parents fly up from Seattle. His mother is immediately warm in a way that my family has never been. She hugs both of us, tells Soren that she's always known I was the person for him because she watched how he talked about me in interviews. Apparently, I've become a subject of significant conversation, and tells me that I'm welcome to her family as long as I treat her son with kindness. He deserves kindness, she says. He has a big heart. I know, I tell her. I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that I understand how lucky I am to have it. My father arrives the day before the wedding. He comes directly to the restaurant, not to the apartment where Soren and I are staying, but to Conversations, where he knows I'll be overseeing last-minute details. I'm in the kitchen, reviewing final preparations, when Yvonne tells me that my father is here. I feel a moment of panic, the same panic I felt when he was visiting before, the same moment of wondering whether I'm going to be good enough, whether the work I've done is going to be impressive enough. But then I remember, I don't need to impress my father anymore. He already knows that I'm capable. What matters now is whether I can let him see who I am without the armor of perfectionism. He's standing in the dining room when I come out. He's older than I remember, which doesn't make sense because it's only been a few months. Or maybe I'm just seeing him differently now that I've learned to see myself. The restaurant is beautiful, he says. I've been reading about it. National publications are calling it innovative. Soren and I built it together, I say. It's his work as much as it's mine. I know, my father says. I was here when you opened Conversations. I came back for the opening night without telling you. I sat at a table in the corner and watched you and Soren work together, and I understood what you two have created. He didn't tell me he came back. Part of me is hurt by this. He was here and didn't let me know. But another part of me understands. He needed to see the work without pressure, without expectation, without my awareness that he was watching. How did it seem? I ask. Perfect, he says. Not in the sense of being flawless, but in the sense of being exactly what it's supposed to be. You've created a philosophy about hospitality, and you're executing on it every single night. That's not luck. That's excellence. Thank you, I say, and I mean it. And this Karen that you mentioned on the phone, I continue, I want to meet her. She's checking into the hotel, my father says. I wanted to come here first. I wanted to see what you've built before introducing her to the wedding situation. He pauses, and then he says something that I wasn't expecting. I'm proud of you, Nico. I tell you this all the time now on the phone, but I wanted to say it in person. I'm proud of who you've become. I'm proud that you learned partnership. I'm proud that you chose love over career advancement when you had to choose. That's something I didn't learn until I was nearly too late. Later that evening, I'm standing in the kitchen at Conversations, and I'm thinking about how much I've learned in the last few months. I've learned that precision can be a form of love. I've learned that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the basis for real connection. I've learned that the most successful relationships are the ones where people challenge each other while also supporting each other. I've learned that my father is human, that he struggled with the same things I struggle with, that becoming someone capable of partnership is something that doesn't come naturally to people like us, but something that we can learn if we're willing to be patient with ourselves. Soren finds me in the kitchen. He's done reviewing his setup for tomorrow, and he looks happy in a way that tells me he's ready for this. Ready to get married. Ready to commit to building a life together publicly. Your dad seems nice, Soren says. He told me that I'm the best thing that ever happened to you. That sounds like him, I say. He's learning to express feelings, so he does it in slightly awkward ways. It's endearing, Soren says. It reminds me that vulnerability takes practice. That even people who've spent 40 years not expressing emotion can learn to do it. Speaking of learning, I say, I want to tell you something. Tomorrow, when we get married, when we stand up in front of all these people and promise to build a life together, I want you to know that I'm terrified. I'm terrified of failing you. I'm terrified that my patterns of perfectionism and protection will come back when things get difficult. I'm terrified that I won't be the kind of partner you deserve. But you're going to try, Soren says. I'm going to try, I confirm. Every single day, I'm going to try. That's all I'm asking for, he says. He takes my hand. We're going to be excellent partners, not because it's easy, but because we're both willing to do the work. The morning of the wedding, I'm in the apartment getting dressed when my father arrives. He's wearing a suit that's clearly been tailored in Arizona. It's more relaxed than anything he ever wore in Portland. He looks like a version of himself that's allowed to be comfortable. You look frightened, he says. I'm getting married, I say. I'm allowed to be frightened. Yes, he says, but you shouldn't be frightened about whether you're good enough or whether you'll be able to do it. You should only be frightened about whether you'll be brave enough to be vulnerable. And I already know you're brave enough. Soren wouldn't be marrying you if you weren't. He helps me with my tie. It's a small gesture, but it feels significant. My father helping me get ready for my wedding. My father who's learning to express love through small actions. When I walk out to the wedding space, to the restaurant where I've been building something meaningful for the last several months, I see Soren standing at the front. He's in a suit that matches mine, and he's smiling like he's the luckiest person in the world. And I understand that I am. I'm the luckiest person in the world because I found someone who's willing to challenge me, who's willing to build things with me, who's willing to love me while I'm learning to be loved. We say vows that we wrote together. We talk about what brought us here. We talk about what comes next. And when we kiss, when the room erupts in applause, I'm thinking about everything that led to this moment. About the food festival where I was arrogant enough to believe I was the expert. About the moment Soren challenged me. About the day Yvonne hired him and created the conditions for us to meet. About every difficult conversation we've had. Every moment where we had to choose love over fear. Every day that we've chosen each other. This is what life is supposed to be. Not perfect, but real. And shared with someone who makes you want to be better. Chapter 16. Soren, Marriage and Vision. 6 months after we get married, 6 months of waking up next to Nico and being genuinely grateful that I heckled him at a food festival, I'm standing in the wine cellar of Conversations, and Nico is showing me something. It's a bottle, a single bottle, with a label that says The Beginning and a date. The date we first met at the food festival. This is from the Gruner Veltliner producer I showed you about, Nico says. Same vintage, same region. It's the wine that made you understand why I cared so much about wine. It's the wine that started everything. I take the bottle and I hold it carefully, understanding that this is sacred. This is the physical manifestation of how we met, how we learned to work together, how we became partners. Where did you find it? I ask. I've been looking for it for 6 months, Nico says, since before we even got together. I wanted to find it because I knew that someday I'd want to commemorate the moment when you understood what I was trying to do. I set the bottle down gently on a shelf, and I pull Nico close. I love you, I say. I love that you think about these things. I love that you find ways to turn our story into something beautiful. I love you too, he says, and I want to talk about what comes next.
More restaurants, I ask?
Maybe, he says. But first, I want to think about the bigger picture. We've created conversations, and it's thriving. The unified menu philosophy is becoming known. Other restaurants are reaching out, asking if we'll consult on their programs. I'm wondering if we should formalize that. I'm wondering if we should create an educational program about how to approach pairing from a perspective of equality and collaboration. You want to teach people, I say. I want us to teach people, he corrects. I want to show other restaurants that you don't have to choose between wine and cocktails. You don't have to make one secondary to the other. You can build a genuine collaboration. Over the next few months, we developed the idea. We call it the Conversations Institute. It's a consultation and education program where Nico and I work with restaurants to help them design their wine and cocktail programs in collaboration rather than competition. We write curriculum, we do a few pilot programs, we start getting inquiries from restaurants across the country who want to understand the philosophy. Margaret comes to one of our early consultations, just to observe, to understand what we're building. After the session, she finds me in the kitchen where I'm preparing for the evening service. You've changed the world, she tells me. Not in a world-changing way, but in a restaurant way. You and Nico have fundamentally changed how people understand the relationship between wine and cocktails. And you've done it by choosing love. I don't know if it's that dramatic, I say. It is, she insists. Before you two, the dominant narrative was that fine dining had wine, and cocktails were a compromise for people who didn't want wine. Now the narrative is that they're equal partners. That's because you were willing to challenge that assumption and prove that it was wrong. By the time we hit our one-year wedding anniversary, celebrated with a special dinner at Conversations where we serve a menu that represents every pairing we've created together, I'm thinking about how much has changed. A year ago, I was falling in love with someone who was using perfectionism as a shield. A year ago, we were still learning how to be vulnerable together. A year ago, the Conversations experience was just an idea. Now Nico and I are building an educational program. Now we're writing articles about the philosophy of collaboration in hospitality. Now we're becoming recognized as experts in something we essentially invented. But more importantly, now I wake up next to someone who's learned to be present. Now I work with someone who challenges me while also supporting me. Now I'm building a life with someone who understands that the best things in life are the ones you create with another person. Nico finds me in the bar one evening, a few months before our second anniversary, and he says something that catches me off guard. I want to move. I want to buy a house together. Okay, I say, surprised that this is surprising. We've been married for almost 2 years. Of course we should buy a house. I've been thinking about it, he continues. We've spent the last year and a half being consumed by work. The Conversations Institute is taking off. We're consulting for restaurants in 3 states. I want to slow down enough to actually build a life together, not just a career together. What does that look like? I ask. A house, he says. Maybe something with land. A place where we can grow things, where we can be intentional about building a home in the way we've been intentional about building restaurants. That sounds beautiful, I say. I want us to have a life outside of work, he says. I want us to travel. I want us to cook together not because we're testing new menu items, but because we want to cook together. I want us to remember that we met as 2 people who had a passion for flavor, and I want to get back to that, not in the context of service, but in the context of just living. This is how I know that Nico has genuinely changed. The old Nico, the one I met at the food festival, would never have suggested slowing down. He would never have suggested that anything could be more important than work. But he's learned, through being loved and through being vulnerable, that the work is only meaningful if there's a life outside of it. We find a house in the hills outside Portland. It's old and needs some work, but it has space. It has land. It has a kitchen where we can cook just for ourselves, without the pressure of service, without the need to perfect every single thing. We move in 6 months later, and for the first time since we've been together, we slow down. We cook dinner together. We take walks. We sit on the porch and drink wine and cocktails that we've made just for us, without any philosophy behind them, except that we wanted to experience them together. It's the best version of what we've built. On our 3rd anniversary, we're sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, and Nico says something that makes me cry. I'm grateful, he says. Every single day, I'm grateful that you heckled me at a food festival. I'm grateful that you saw something in my precision that could become something beautiful instead of something rigid. I'm grateful that you chose to stay even when I was pushing you away. I'm grateful that you've taught me how to love. I'm grateful too, I say, for all of those things, and also for you being willing to learn, for you being brave enough to be vulnerable, for choosing love over fear, even when fear is more familiar. We did good, he says. We did really good. I agree. And we sit together as the sun sets. Two people who came together in the most unexpected way and built something beautiful. Not just restaurants, not just a philosophy about how hospitality can work, but a life. A life where precision and creativity coexist, where wine and cocktails are equal partners, where love is understood as a system worth understanding, a practice worth committing to, a choice worth making every single day. We're not perfect, but we're real, and we're grateful for each other every day. That's everything. Epilogue. 5 years later. 5 years after we met at the Portland Food and Wine Festival, 5 years after I heckled a sommelier and changed the trajectory of my entire life, I'm sitting in the Conversations Institute office in Portland, reviewing applications from restaurants across the country who want to learn our philosophy. There are 43 applications this month, 43 restaurants that have heard about what Nico and I have built and want to understand how to replicate it in their own spaces. Not copy it. Replicate is the wrong word. Adapt it, refine it, make it their own while maintaining the core philosophy that wine and cocktails are equal partners, that collaboration matters more than competition, that hospitality is fundamentally about respect. Nico is in the next room, consulting with a restaurant group from San Francisco. Yes, San Francisco, the same city that offered him a job 5 years ago, the city that he turned down to choose us. He's been working with them for 3 months now, helping them design their wine and cocktail program. But he comes home to me. He chooses to come home every single time he chooses to come home. We still work at Conversations, the restaurant where we married, the restaurant where we proved that the unified menu philosophy works. But we've also built something bigger. We've built the Institute. We've written a book, published last year. It's already in its second printing. We've given talks at industry conferences. We've become, somehow, the voices of a movement that's reshaping how restaurants approach the relationship between wine and cocktails. Yvonne was right, as always. The best partnerships are built on proximity and respect. She created the conditions for us to meet, and then she had the wisdom to get out of the way and let us build. Nico comes into the office around 2 in the afternoon, and he collapses into the chair across from my desk like he's exhausted. He probably is. He spends a lot of time consulting now, helping restaurants understand how to structure their programs for collaboration rather than hierarchy. The San Francisco group wants to add a third tier to the program, he says. They want to offer a sake pairing option alongside wine and cocktails. That's ambitious, I say. 3 different mediums, all treated as equals? I know, he says, but I think it's possible. I think if we can help them understand the philosophy, that it's not about hierarchy, it's about creating genuine conversation between different approaches to flavor, then adding sake makes sense. It's another voice in the conversation. This is what I love about Nico now. He's open to ideas. He's willing to experiment. He's learned that rigidity wasn't actually about quality. It was about fear. And now that he's learned to be less afraid, his work has become more expansive, more interesting, more genuinely innovative. Let's think about that, I say. Let's talk about what sake could bring to a conversation that wine and cocktails alone can't. We spend the next hour brainstorming, and it's exactly the same kind of conversation we've been having since we first started collaborating. We're pushing each other, we're respecting each other's expertise, while also demanding that each other think bigger, differently, more creatively. Margaret comes by the office around 4, as she does most days. She's retired from her job. Whatever it was, she never told us. And she's become something like the house philosopher of the Conversations Institute. She sits in on consultations. She advises on program design. She's become essential to what we're building. I have news, she says, looking pleased with herself. The James Beard Foundation is giving your institute an award. It's a special award, something they don't usually do for businesses that aren't restaurants themselves. but they're calling it the Award for Changing the Landscape of American Hospitality Through Collaborative Practice. Nico and I look at each other. We've won several awards over the years, for conversations, for our consulting work, for the book, but an award from the Beard Foundation, an award that acknowledges what we've built as a philosophy rather than just as a business. That's something different. That's extraordinary, Nico says. It's recognition that what you two have done matters, Margaret says. You've changed how the industry thinks about collaboration. You've changed how people understand the relationship between different disciplines. That's not small. After Margaret leaves, Nico and I sit in the office in Portland, and we talk about how we got here. We talk about the food festival and the heckling, and the moment when we first understood that we could build something together. We talk about the hard parts, the conversations about San Francisco, the moments when we almost gave up on each other, the times when pride or fear almost destroyed what we were building. We talk about how grateful we are that we didn't. That evening, we go home to the house we bought 3 years ago. It's in the hills outside Portland, and it's beautiful in a way that doesn't have anything to do with Michelin stars or industry awards. It's beautiful because it's ours. We maintain the garden together. We cook together. We drink wine and cocktails that we make just for ourselves, for the pleasure of it. Nico opens a bottle of the Gruner Veltliner. Not the special one marked the beginning, but another bottle from the same producer, the same vintage, the wine that started everything. To us, he says, raising his glass. To us, I echo. We clink glasses in the kitchen of our house, and I'm thinking about how much my life has changed since I walked into a restaurant in Portland looking for a job. I'm thinking about the man I met there, the sommelier who was so certain of his position that he couldn't imagine being challenged. I'm thinking about how we learned to challenge each other in ways that made us both better. I'm thinking about how love, real love, partnership-based love, collaborative love, is the most important thing we've built. The restaurants are successful. The consulting firm is thriving. The book is well received. The awards are meaningful. But all of that would be empty if we didn't have each other. All of that would be hollow if we hadn't learned to be present for each other, to challenge each other, to build something that matters together. Later that evening, we're on the porch, and Nico reaches over and takes my hand. I'm still grateful, he says, every single day. So am I say. And we sit together as the sun sets over the hills outside Portland, two people who came together in the most unexpected way and have built a life that exceeds any expectation either of us ever had. We're not perfect. We still fight sometimes. We still struggle with vulnerability and pride and the difficulty of being two people trying to build something together. But we show up. We try. We choose each other every single day. And that's everything. Author's note. When I first began writing Last Call, I wanted to tell a story about collaboration. Not the corporate kind of collaboration, where people work together but don't truly understand each other, but the real kind. The kind that requires vulnerability, respect, and a genuine willingness to be changed by another person. Nico and Soren's story is about two people who come from completely different approaches to their crafts. Nico sees wine as a precise, almost mathematical discipline. Soren sees cocktails as creative and improvisational. When they're forced to work together, they have to find a way to honor both approaches while building something new. That's what real partnership looks like. It's not one person winning and the other compromising. It's both people being willing to expand their understanding of what's possible. Throughout this manuscript, I was thinking about precision as a form of care. I was thinking about how people like Nico, people who organize and control and structure, often do this because they care deeply. They're not being cold, they're being intentional. And understanding that difference changes everything about how we relate to people whose love languages are different from our own. I was also thinking about vulnerability. Soren has to learn to value Nico's precision instead of seeing it as rigidity. Nico has to learn to value Soren's flexibility instead of seeing it as chaos. They have to meet in the middle, and that middle space, that space where two different worldviews coexist, is where love actually happens. The Portland food and wine scene is real. The Beard Awards are real. But Nico, Soren, Yvonne, and Margaret are fictional characters designed to explore what genuine collaboration looks like. They're designed to show that the best partnerships are built on respect, proximity, shared commitment, and a willingness to be changed by another person. If you found yourself in a partnership that challenges you, romantic or professional. I hope this book helps you understand that challenge as a gift rather than a threat. I hope it helps you see that people who push you to grow are actually the people who love you most. And if you're thinking about opening a restaurant and trying to figure out how to approach the relationship between wine and cocktails, well, maybe the answer is collaboration. Maybe the answer is creating genuine dialogue between different approaches rather than establishing hierarchy. That's what Nico and Soren discovered, and it's what I discovered while writing them, that the best things we build are the things we build together. Thank you for reading. The End. Bonus scene, Margaret's story. 10 years before I met Nico, I was married to a man named Thomas. Thomas was a banker, precise, careful, always doing things the right way. He was the kind of person who made spreadsheets for his feelings, if you know what I mean. He approached love like he approached work, with efficiency and structure and absolutely no room for spontaneity. I tried to be the kind of person he wanted. I learned to be orderly. I learned to plan. I learned to value precision as a form of care, because that's what Thomas valued. But I'm not a precise person. I'm a person who likes surprise and change and the unexpected. And after 20 years of marriage, I realized that living with someone who values precision above all else doesn't mean learning to love structure. It means slowly erasing yourself. We divorced when I was 52 years old. It was amicable. We still send Christmas cards. But I've spent the last 10 years learning to be myself again. The version of myself that likes spontaneity, that values risk, that believes that the most important things in life are the ones that aren't planned for. Nico uses precision. Soren uses flexibility. But they're both trying to say the same thing. I care about you enough to understand your language. I care about you enough to honor your approach, even when it's different from mine. This is what I tried to tell Thomas, and he couldn't hear it. This is what Nico and Soren figured out almost immediately. When I told them that they'd changed my understanding of what love could be, I wasn't exaggerating. Watching their relationship unfold at Ponte, watching them build the conversations experience, watching them actually succeed at something that looked impossible, this changed how I understood my own life. It made me realize that divorce wasn't a failure. It was a necessary ending so that something else, something truer to who I am, could begin. I spent the years after my divorce learning to cook for myself, not for a husband who needed care, but for me. I learned to travel alone. I learned to sit in restaurants and taste wine and appreciate the care that goes into service. I learned to value my own preferences instead of constantly negotiating what someone else wanted. And then Ponte opened, and I met Nico, and I started to understand that the answer isn't choosing between precision and spontaneity. The answer is finding someone who can be both, or finding someone who can honor both in you, even if they express love differently. Nico and Soren did this. They took two fundamentally different approaches to their work and to life, and they created something that honored both. They didn't compromise, they synthesized. They created something new. This is the kind of love I wish I'd known about when I was young. This is the kind of partnership I wish I'd been brave enough to demand. But maybe I needed to learn it this way. Maybe I needed to spend 10 years understanding what I actually wanted before I could fully appreciate what they were building. Now I come to conversations 2 or 3 times a week. I sit at the bar and taste the cocktails. I order wines and ask Nico to explain his thinking. I watch Soren work. And I'm grateful every single time that I get to witness a partnership built on genuine respect and genuine understanding. They're going to change the world. Not in a global sense, but in a restaurant sense. They're going to show other restaurants, other people, other partnerships that the best relationships are built on understanding that different approaches to love aren't inferior, they're just different. And different is good. Different is actually beautiful if you're brave enough to see it.
Thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe, leave a comment, and review